Welcome back, everybody. Today's episode, like all episodes, are brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee. Let's go to the website right now and see what they have going on. First thing on the rotating banner that I'm seeing is their boot campaign. Raise a can, raise a million. Help Black Rifle Coffee and the boot campaign raise $1 million for veterans. Go to blackriflecoffee.com, click on the Learn More in the rotating banner, and it's going to provide you way more information than I could give you or that I have time to give you. The next thing I'm going to see in the rotating banner is pumpkin spice. It's PSL season. I mean, I guess the real question is it ever really not PSL season? Maybe they don't taste that good in the summer, but I feel like they could be good at any time if prepared properly. There's a Horseman's Roast. There is a pumpkin spice espresso ready to drink and a Horseman's Roast K-Cups for those of you who just hate making coffee appropriately. And then, like I always say, this website has got as much stuff as you could possibly want for somebody who's a coffee fan or connoisseur. Thanksgiving's right around the corner. Have some cool stuff for the people that come over. And then, as I've stated recently, let's think about the holidays. Christmas is right around the corner. This stuff fits perfectly under the tree and in a stocking. So think ahead. If you're anything like me, you wait till the last minute and then worry about whether or not things are going to show up on time. And that's it on the business side of the house. My guest today, the topic of conversation for today is a timely one, given what is going on in the world, specifically in Israel and the Gaza Strip between the Israelis and Hamas, or the optic, if you want to pull it out even farther, that geopolitical arena of the world. My guests, Bernardo and Richard, both served in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. Richard was actually living in the United States and chose to go to Israel, not having been born there, and serve in the IDF. Bernardo, born in Mexico, made the same decision and ended up serving for 16 years at a variety of capacities that he explains on the show. And it's a difficult conversation. I understand that the situation in Israel, it really depends on your belief and the optic with which you view the world. One thing that I asked, and I think was accomplished well during the episode, specifically from Bernardo, kind of breaking down the situation in Israel from inception to modern day, obviously through his lens and the Israeli lens, which I'm not saying is a complete view of the situation or subject. But I think it's important. I think it provides some edification for people on what's going on over there. And at the end of the day, these voices and these experiences provide insight that, quite frankly, I don't think you're going to find on traditional media. Is it the complete story? Of course not. I don't know if it's possible to have a complete story, but it's a good step in the right direction. And with that, let's get into it. Episode number 309 with Richard and Bernardo. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
But I really want to teach you what a macchiato is, honestly.
I don't need to know what a macchiato is to own a coffee shop. I found the button successfully. What is it?
Touche. Okay, let's learn about a macchiato. A macchiato is a few espresso shots and just a little foam.
But you said you have an allergy to coffee.
That is Bernardo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, every time I drink caffeine, my dick grows bigger. And
yes.
I had to stop. It's just unsustainable.
At some point, it's just going to be untenable. I understand.
Exactly. Yeah, I wish I... Yeah,
No, actually, I did. I am allergic to caffeine. I can't have it anymore.
How did you determine that?
Well, I had this thing that kept coming on my fingers, like eczema, and there were cuts. It was nasty, all the time cuts, like just pain all the time. And I just had to live with it, right? I was like, what the hell is this? What the hell is this? And eventually I had a virus one time, and I couldn't drink coffee because it would like really upset my stomach for a couple weeks. And suddenly they went away. I was like, how is this possible? And I said, hey, I'm going to give it a try. I'm not going to drink coffee for a while. And they've never come back.
Really? Interesting.
And I had also, like, my blood pressure was high from it. Like, I would, like, do, when you do, like, a medical test or something and make you run and stuff like that. Like, I was fine, but it would take a long time for the blood pressure to go down. And I don't have it anymore either, so...
What was your daily intake at that point?
Man, I don't know, but I drank a lot of coffee. Yeah,
A couple pots a day.
it could be.
Yeah, that's going to have some medical consequences for sure. So this is a quick turn one. You guys reached out to me. I think it was Friday.
Yeah.
Of last week.
Yeah.
Where would you gentlemen like to begin?
Where shall we begin?
Why don't you introduce yourself?
All right, cool. Why don't we start there?
Okay.
So first of all,
Let's talk a little closer to the microphone.
like this.
Yeah, we'll pull
Are
it
we
to-
rolling now?
Oh, we've been going
Yeah,
for
we're going.
a few
Oh, we've
minutes.
been going. All right, cool. So everybody
Just
knows
pull it,
about.
Just pull it towards you.
Pull me closer.
There you
Where
go.
are my hands?
You can look at this.
We're here.
It goes.
All
like
right,
this.
cool.
You can fully manipulate it. However, follow your heart.
Hold it like this.
Many people do. Many people do. I don't know what that says about them. It's
I know.
2023.
But
Live your
notice
life
I
how
did
you
not.
want.
I did not. So let's start
Nothing
there.
wrong with it.
So yeah, I think it was Friday morning you got back to me and you're like, hey, I'm game.
Yes.
I had reached out to you before with the idea of speaking kind of as an American Israeli, right? You've talked about national service. Some countries that have national service have a little bit of a different outlook on life, right?
Yep.
I thought that might be a good discussion to have, being an American Israeli who volunteered in the IDF, had lived there for a number of years. But
you volunteered while living in the U.S.
Correct.
Right? You went an
Correct.
additional step. You were not an Israeli living in Israel,
Yep.
which is fascinating in and of itself. You
Yeah.
were still down for the mandatory service, even though you weren't living in that country.
Correct.
Which is an
And
additional step.
Correct. And I actually had no Hebrew at all when I moved to Israel as well. I was detached in many ways from the country, but still had a pulling to move over there and do so. So that would be a great topic to discuss because I represent many people like myself that go ahead and do that, actually. A lot of people do that. But the last week, a lot of things have changed. And so
Yeah.
today I am speaking as an Israeli American who lived in southern Israel, who was a member of the communities that were attacked, and bringing light to their memory and honestly to explain what's going on to the best I can.
You still didn't introduce yourself with things like
I still haven't?
your name.
Okay, let's start with my name. So my name is Richard Static. And
Usually how people do it.
yeah, my name is Richard.
He's a storyteller. I've already determined this.
Uh-oh, I've been labeled a storyteller.
No, that's not
That's
bad.
good.
All right,
That's not bad.
I'll do what I can. So my name is Richard. I'm out of Portland, Oregon, about 30 minutes west of Oregon. Been there a good portion of my life, but I spent about 8 to 10 years living in Israel.
Before I forget,
Yeah.
and I have never been to Israel, how much English is spoken versus Hebrew?
So English is taught in schools, so everybody has a basic understanding of English, but its main language is Hebrew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sir?
If you go to a private school in Israel, you'll speak pretty good English.
Okay.
But the rest of the population, they say they speak English, but they don't speak English.
It's like people in the U.S. who say they speak Spanish because they did 4 years of it in
Yeah.
high school, and they can say, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? Which means, where is the library?
Give me some queso with jalapenos.
Taquiros and JoJo's.
See.
My name is Bernardo, and first of all, Andy, thanks for having us today.
Of course.
And in such short notice, and thanks for everything. It's also a great excuse to get to know Montana, which I've never been here before, and only hear like amazing things about. I grew up in Mexico, and I lived there for 19 years. After high school, I went to Israel. I was going to visit originally. I ended up staying, and I became an Israeli after a while, and I decided to go into the IDF. And then I started a career there, which started doing infantry in the IDF. I then was in a reconnaissance battalion in the IDF. And then from there, I went into federal law enforcement in Israel. So I worked in airline security, dignitary protection, all the way to being an instructor for like the Academy of Federal Agents over there. And I finished my career over there being in the border police. I was an officer with a special operations unit that's called YAMAS, not Hamas, YAMAS. And it specializes in law enforcement intelligence, undercover operations. And about 2 years ago, I got a call from a buddy of mine, offered me a job here in America. And I came here to live the American dream.
What was it growing up in Mexico that was intriguing for you about Israel? What got you over there in the first place?
So I was born in Mexico, and my family, mother and father, they're both a couple, 3 or 4 generations in Mexico. From my mother's side, the family came from Spain at some point. From my father's side, the family came from Eastern Europe at some point. And my father's side comes from a Jewish background. So I grew up in Mexico, and I didn't grow up, studying in a Jewish school or anything like that. But my mother, she converted to Judaism, and so she, raised me like that. And I would go to youth groups of kind of like scouts, where everybody was Jewish there. So I learned a lot about Israel in those groups, and that was my only connection to Israel and to Judaism, really. So when I finished high school, my mom came one day to me, and she told me, hey, there's this... We were kind of having a difficult time, me and my mother, and we were just meeting a couple times every week or 2 weeks. And she told me, hey, you know what, I have an idea for you. I heard about this trip that you can go to Israel with, and it's called the Birthright or something like that. And you can go, and it doesn't cost any money, and you'll get to visit Israel. And then you can stay, and you can work in one of the kibbutz, which is an agricultural community, and you'll learn the language, you'll have fun. I was like, look, Mom, where did you find about this, right? And I don't know what she told me, because I thought she was being scammed. I didn't believe it at the beginning. But it turned out to be true, and so that's how I got to Israel. And originally I was going to just do this program and work in the fields. I was working with banana fields, and I was learning Hebrew. But really it's adult vacation. Like I had people from all over the world staying in the same place, and it was just fun. And then eventually I just liked it there, and I saw always a goal, an objective of something I could do. And, that led to me deciding that I wanted to become a citizen of that country and go to the military. And then 16 and a half years I served until I came here.
Is that a difficult process to become a citizen?
If you have some sort of a Jewish background, then it's very easy, right? So it's kind of like how people come to America and they marry an American. So in Israel, if you have some Jewish background, that's how you become Israeli.
If you decide to do that, are you then obligated to the mandatory service?
Depending on your age, you are. So when I was... But, for example, say I was 19, 20 years old when I started the process, and then my commitment to military service would have been only 6 months.
Oh, interesting.
So if you're older than 21, I don't think they make you do anything anymore. Yeah.
And the reason behind that law is if you were Jewish enough during the Nazi regime in Europe, right, one-quarter grandparent, like one Jewish grandparent, they felt if you're Jewish enough to die, you're Jewish enough to live in Israel. So that's the theory behind that law they have. So is it 2 years or like you're saying 6 months? It seems like a little bit of a floating scale. So when we were in service, like any Israeli woman would have to do about 2 years of national service and men 3. Since then, they've brought it down a little bit. I think it's like 2.5 years for men now. And women, I still have to do around 2. Now, when we say national service, though, it's not just the army. Like, there's also things called what do they call it? Basically national service, where you volunteer in a hospital, where you work with kids. So it's just some sort of national service you have to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. You can volunteer in the police, you can work, even intelligence agencies have interns that are doing national service. And so there's a lot of options. It changed through the years from 3 years, and it keeps going down. Mm-hmm. The reason for that is also because the public is less and less excited about it. So you actually have, now after this war, I think it always goes up. But before this, the percentages of people who would want to go to military service was very low. And those who, basically to be a combat soldier, you pretty much have to volunteer because it's very easy to get out of it. You can just claim you're injured in something and that's it. You stay, you don't do anything. And so the numbers were low. When a couple of years ago, I was leading an army prep group for kids, and numbers were less than 12% would go to combat out of the entire youth of Israel. And you have something like 20 or 30% who were not even drafting. So things changed through the years.
Yeah. Let's say, excluding the previous week, because obviously we'll get to that, You do your, call it 2 years to kind of just an average sweet spot. What is expected of you during that time period? I mean, obviously you could volunteer or for the intelligence agencies, the hospitals, but let's say you're going to join the IDF combat force. 2 years is not very much time to spend immersing yourself in that occupation. Looking backwards at my old job.
You're already talking about the occupation. Okay, we'll get to that.
Well, it's
just kidding.
No. What I mean is, if you look at it,
the profession.
Like, what can you do in 2 years or 2 to 3 years?
What can you do in 2 years? You could, in my old job, maybe get a broad understanding of what would be expected of you, but you're not going to be very proficient at any of those things.
So let's walk through the lifespan of a combat soldier. Let's say a line infantry unit, right? So when I was in, it was about 3 years for the average soldier there. So you do about a year and 14 months of training, right? Which is, I think, pretty similar to American infantry.
No,
about a year.
The training itself is 7 months.
Right. But then you go into a finishing school where you're pretty much operational, but you're still in a like a company of training. So you're part of the big battalion, but you're the training company, right? You do that. And then from there, primarily, you're just training and you're going to different border regions and doing operations there. So making sure the borders are secure, doing a lot of counter-terror work. You're not doing specialized units like specialized missions like what Bernardo was doing. That's for more veterans that have been in for a while. But you're plugging the holes and securing the borders.
How much combat, and again, obviously we have to speak broadly, and not including this last week, or what's, in my assessment at least, what is probably about to come. Was the expectation that you would actually see combat, or you are filling the role that needs to be filled, and maybe occasionally something would kick off?
It depends. Yeah. Like, there's waves, right? There are waves of time. For example, let's say just about the times we went in. I went into the military in 2004, and at that time, there was a lot going on in the West Bank, in Gaza. So you were expected. I remember going in, I had a friend who told me, don't go to this battalion because there's one guy dead every week there. You go to this other battalion, right? And I'm telling you things I remember as a kid there. I was, 19 years old. But then after a few years, let's say 2007, there was still a lot going on. 2008, 2009, things started to go down in terms of like what happens in the West Bank and in the Gaza border and Lebanon.
From a kinetic perspective,
yes,
you mean?
From a kinetic perspective. And I think most of what we can speak of is that, right? It's being a foot soldier in a way, because I don't know much about other stuff. But so then there was a wave of many, many years where things were pretty calm, and you wouldn't expect to really see a lot of combat. And a lot of people were even disappointed because of that.
Yeah.
So it was very rare, and only the top units would, like, let's say if there was an attack and there's a guy that they know it's armed and is waiting for, fighting forces are going to come and get him, they would send only a few units to do that. And so that kept the experience in those units. Everybody else didn't get any experience for many years. And up until, let's say, 5 years ago, it started to change a little bit. And 3 years ago, it went back to what it was when I went in 2004, where you have IEDs in the West Bank, where you have people, actually engaging you with all sorts of weapons and operations. And partly that is because the funding changed and the environment changed just in the Middle East in general. Mm-hmm. So it really depends of the time and the conditions of the environment. But now you can expect to be in combat even without what happened last week.
Yeah.
But 5 years ago, it would be maybe questionable.
It's one of the things, I am not an expert on the region by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm also not oblivious to the kinetic activity that you've talked about across that timeline. And I can't, it's a broad statement, but it has surprised me how many people who think that what happened recently is the first kinetic activity that has happened over there in quite some time. And it's just not the reality on the ground. I actually did some news stations reached out and were asking for my opinion on what was going on, specifically from a perspective of kind of fighting in an environment that's covered with rubble, three-dimensional urban environment with tunnels. Mm-hmm. Fuck me. Not horrible. Fun. The person that was on, or the people that were on right before me, I was kind of listening. They were talking about, the and I don't think they were trying to be dismissive in any way, but they said, well, Israelis have never faced, combat like this. They're not trained for this. And I actually opened the segment with, I need to disagree with your previous two guests. I think they had their, let's just say their collar device was a lot more shiny than mine when I was in the military. So the air they were breathing was a little bit higher up. I actually hosted and trained 2 times when I was at an East Coast SEAL team. And I don't remember the exact unit that it was, but I was at development group at the time. And I think it was
must have been the SEALs, the Israeli SEALs.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, we
and
had
so
a lot of friends there.
I had them come over twice, trained for them. I hosted their training, and they're very well trained for the environment that they're going to be going into. So even those people, prior U.S. military, very senior officers, didn't seem like they had an understanding of the actual reality on the ground over there.
Right. Yeah. And those units, like Bernardo was saying, is they had a lot of action. They're very well prepared for those environments, right? But if we look at the rotation of the infantry units, right, actually on those borders that were attacked last week, they're the ones that I guess did not have that same historical knowledge of combat, right? Going on 3-year rotations, not having the same level of training. And I think we saw the results of that last week.
I think it played a little bit more into not only that, but let's be honest, Hamas was pretty smart in what they did.
Very.
They waited until a time period where, in my understanding, there was less people on the border. It was a holiday. They attacked at a time where they could kind of get the jump. And they really, they spearheaded into the places that they attacked before they could be backfilled and the defensive units could get there. From a tactical perspective,
very well planned.
They planned it well.
Yeah.
Well, the some of the documents that were found in some of these operatives that infiltrated Israel, like they came in even with documents of their training. Like they had booklets, and they're from 2022. Like they have dates where they started to train for this operation. But there's a lot of questions about what happened because, when I look at it from a macro perspective of what all the agencies and the armed forces do in Israel, I could understand that some of the forces in the border were maybe, like the observation specialists and maybe a couple infantry units that were, in holiday or something like that. But I don't have an answer yet for how come, almost 1,500 or more operatives communicated between them, the term coordinated training, coordinated when it was going to happen. All of this happened and nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
Where I know that there's, the Israeli Security Agency, they're specifically in charge of Gaza in terms of a territory that they have intelligence networks in, that they gather intelligence from, various ways, right? So I still don't have an answer for that. And then the second thing that is also a puzzle for me is how come it took the IDF almost half a day to reach those communities in the south, where really the only force that was combating these terrorists was Israeli police and Israeli border guard, and the citizens themselves. So those are two things that I don't have an answer for. I don't know exactly what happened. A lot of people don't have an answer for, and some people are even thinking that maybe it was treason from someone. Other people are saying, hey, no, Iran really was able to hack many systems that were involved in that. But I don't know what the truth is. But I'm still very puzzled about it.
I had friends posting on Facebook, their location, we're this community, we're under attack, we need help, where's the army? That's where they're at.
What would be the reasonable response time for the army in that situation?
30 minutes usually. So when I lived there, it's usually about 30 minutes. And that's including medical emergencies and stuff like that. We had to get a helicopter in for, we had medical emergencies. We've had slight scares in the past. It'd be about 30 minutes, right? This was 6 to 12 hours.
I would hate to think that there was any level of it being an inside job. If you look backwards on a postmortem about 9/11, it was, I don't want to pin it on the intelligence community by any stretch, because I do believe that they were trying to do the best to their ability. But we hadn't had an enemy in a while, so maybe we just won't share information because we need this for our budget.
Right.
And then you put all the information together in the postmortem. It's, hey guys, maybe we had a lot of this, and again, I think it was human error and people's desire to have relevance in their organizations that prevented that cross communication. So I would hope that it was something like that. Or, I mean, in a high-tech environment, we all know this. What can an enemy do to almost disappear?
Right.
Go incredibly low tech. But 1,500 people
That's the problem.
is a lot to mobilize.
It's a lot. You know,
Even onesie-twosies. They got to stay somewhere. Like, I actually, when I saw the video of, I guess, what would they be, the tricycle paragliders?
Yeah, the paragliders.
Like, you have got to be fucking kidding me. It was like a battalion of paragliders.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like one of the first successful para-assaults, I think, in modern history, to be honest.
Yeah, because there are only people fucking crazy enough to try it.
No one does that. And I mean, exactly. It was
All I need
insane.
is a javelin clue
Yep.
and an unlimited pile of missiles, or I need a belt-fed machine gun, and let's do this.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
a good point.
it's not like they're fast or
no.
quiet.
Well, yeah, exactly. I was going to say they're loud. Everyone could hear them.
When I first saw that picture,
Yeah.
it was the first time I saw it was, of course, through a meme. We're in the goddamn
Obviously.
era of getting our news through a meme. Yeah. And there was a video game that my son used to play. Michael probably did, PUBG or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard
And you
that
start jumping off of this spaceship, and everybody's canopy opens. I thought it was a military. Yeah.
There you go.
Holy.
And, you know, they're at a festival. I mean, everybody's probably on drugs right there. They just see these paragliders coming down.
Obviously, they look at them.
They're
They're
like, oh, wow.
cool.
You know, I mean, imagine that. Like,
But how did they stage all? What distance did they travel? Do you guys know?
We don't know.
No, this is they travel. This within.
You probably
if
know
I'm
the
not
range better
mistaken,
than we
this is
do.
10 miles from the border. That party.
So a short flight.
It's a very short flight, and it was at the same time that a barrage of rockets was being fired at Israel. So, and at the same time that they were using drones to eliminate some of the observation points and whatever technology the observation units had. It still doesn't justify it to me, but you know, it was all coordinated at the same time. And using the paragliders was a great idea. It wasn't the only way they crossed the border.
Yeah, I saw videos of motorcycle. Right. Basically, they breached and overwhelmed.
And there's also
border.
tunnels that cross the border.
tunnels
So
as well.
a lot of them have been eliminated, but there's tunnels that still exist because they just can't find them all.
Yeah.
But you know, you guys brought up the preparedness of the IDF. I think when you serve only in one place and you only see one thing, you tend to be very confused by what's out there, right? And how you can't really compare it. Also, a lot of people like to compare units. They're like, who's better, the Navy SEALs or the SBS of the UK?
Who gives a shit?
And you can't really compare it anyways because it's different conditions and different challenges that they face and different operations. Like, it's just no way of comparing that. But having been exposed to working with U.S. counterparts in different positions, having been exposed to training people from other countries and units and seeing things in so many environments, it took me a while, but I realized what the pros or the advantages of the IDF are and what the other challenges are as well, right? And I think a lot of the perception that people have of the IDF comes from the 70s, the 80s, where the IDF won wars where there was 6 countries trying to invade Israel, and they somehow fought it back. And when I was going into the infantry, I was told, "Oh, you're going to become such professional soldiers, the best army in the world, the best training." I still hear that today sometimes. The truth is that Israel's not that special at the end of the day. There's certain things that are good, and there's certain things that aren't special than anybody else. So you got to be able to look at the whole perspective, right? So what are some of the challenges? Number one is what you mentioned. We don't have that. When you look at the infantry, at tier 3 units and such, there's no historical knowledge of things because there are very few people who are NCOs who can stay there for years, be excellent at something. Yeah. The turnover is constant, right? For example, when you're an infantryman in the IDF, they bring a unit that's made of mostly girls, it's like 85% girls, and they teach people how to shoot. Okay, they teach people how to shoot your carbine and go to combat with it. So she gets a book that says, "Hey, this is what you need to do because of whatever you have." If it has examples, and she just tells you, but she's never been to combat. Like, that's her job from the day she went into the military to the day she goes out. When you climb up to other units, then it becomes different, right? So you have units that are made of some percentage of NCOs and some percentage of conscripts. So you can have trainers or a training department that has people who've been there for many, many years. And there you can have historical knowledge, right? And then at the higher, like tier 1 units, they get anything, right? Like they bring civilian instructors for whatever they want, and they go and train with other units, right? And they come back and they bring units, they host units. So at various levels that can change. But in the general, I would say the majority of the IDF is kids, and there's a high turnover. So it's very hard to keep that historical knowledge. So how can you be the best, right, if you have that? It's not really possible. So what are the things that Israel is very good at, though? That format of having conscripts, first of all, from a macro perspective, it forces the IDF to have the best youth of the country go through them. So no matter what's happening, the best people in the country are going to go through the IDF at some point, and they're either going to stay in the IDF or they're going to leave a mark in the IDF somehow. Kids, right? But they're still the best in the country. You're talking about the best kids in the country. They have to go to the army. In other countries, they don't have that. You have excellent people in service, but they're not necessarily the best people in the from the country. So that already is a positive thing. Another thing is that the motivation to do things is different than being, let's say, in the U.S. Army, right? For example, here, just near here, there's the Foreign Wars. What is it? The
Veteran of Foreign Wars.
Veteran of Foreign Wars, right?
VFW.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. The difference that I want to point here is that when you're in the IDF, you're fighting maybe in your own town. Or you're fighting someone who's like next to your town. So you see the direct influence of your work in the safety of those that you love. I think that's a very different perspective than being across the ocean somewhere where they're telling you, hey, you're bringing peace to America and freedom, all of this, but you don't see it. So that perspective is also an advantage of the IDF, because it's easier to be a patriot, to be motivated. It's easier to find those individuals because of that, because you can see your results affecting the people that you love, a couple doors down.
Can the Israeli military participate in police operations?
Yes and no.
By law, they can't, but they can support police operations, and it also depends in which area. So, for example, within Israel, they can't. In certain areas of the West Bank or the Palestinian Authority, they could support those operations. Well, that's why Israel has the border police, which is kind of like a militarized police, and they deal with situations that are kind of like require soldiers with law enforcement credentials. That's why the border police exists, and that's what they do.
Your VFW statement, which I agree with, by the way, it just got me thinking. I mean, in the U.S., by doctrine, the U.S. military cannot participate in any way in policing activities.
Right.
Passi comitatus prevents it.
Yeah.
Well, like, for example, like as a line infantry unit, when I was in the West Bank, we would support the police as a cover, right? We would not do any of the policing actions, right? We would just be there in case something turned into a terrorist attack. Then the army is allowed to go ahead and do something and get to work there. So that's the extent.
I wish they would let us do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like the San
Why not?
Bernardino.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Dudes who are like, hey, maybe we just have a platoon of guys here with M60s.
Exactly. It's helpful. I mean, isn't that the point of having the hostage rescue team was to have those units?
Yes, but so that's the time to mobilize the FBI's HRT, though, and so there's the localized SWAT. But again, for a lot of those departments, it's an ancillary duty, not a primary duty, so they're rushing to get there.
Sure.
Yeah, I can see the argument for and against it, for sure. I was just curious. I didn't have any knowledge about how it was for the IDF.
Yeah.
It might actually be beneficial, not only for myself, but for listeners or watchers as well, if you could paint a picture of, prior to this last week, because obviously we'll talk about that, but just the existence of Israel and the neighboring areas and the potential conflicts that come just from the geography of it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I think a lot of Americans are hearing for the first time about Gaza or getting a better understanding of where it is, or Israel or the bordering countries. And both of you have spent a lot of time there, so I think it would be excellent if you could just paint for us a picture.
I think we could paint a picture, but it's not going to be a complete picture, because you really, to explain to people, you tend to have to go back in time a lot, because it's so complex.
We have like a 3 terabyte hard drive, so go to town.
I don't have a problem with it, but it's never going to be enough. But
no picture is ever perfect or complete.
Right.
I think we can all agree upon that.
What's important to understand is that you had the biblical area of Israel, which has been in existence for thousands of years, and there's been people living there who, throughout the years, you've had Jews, Muslims, Christians, and other religions who have lived there in that area. Okay, and it has evolved, and there's been different empires who have been in charge of that area. Okay, one of to get it to modern history, the Ottoman Empire was in charge of that area, and then the British colonized that area, and they were in charge of that area. Also, the French in Lebanon. And in 1948, or after, what the British basically couldn't handle that area anymore because there was so much guerrilla fighting going on up against them and calls for independence. And through the UN and all the things that happened, there was a declaration, there was a state of Israel that came out from it. Okay. Now someone's really trying to reach me. I don't know what the hell's going on here. But anyways,
probably just the NSA. You're spilling all the secrets.
Probably
could be.
Or taken back to Israel.
Or my wife. Something. I probably left something on the table or whatever.
I'd be more worried about my wife than the NSA, to be honest.
Amen.
So what's neighboring, right? So another perspective to understand is that Israel is the only Jewish country in the world, and it's surrounded by countries that are Muslim. And if you look at North Africa, going all the way up to Iran and Turkey and all that area, all of the countries are Muslim except for one. So it's really the biggest challenge for the vision of Pan-Arabism, right? Of having like an area that's only Muslim, only with the same beliefs and same ideals. And Israel has neighboring countries in the north, like Lebanon and Syria. And we know what happened in Syria over, I think it started in Obama's presidency, right? Yep. And you have Lebanon. And the reason I mentioned this because those two countries, the reason it really matters for Israel is because Israel's been in conflict with Iran for many, many years. But Iran is one of those countries that are excellent at being in conflict with you without being directly in conflict with you. They use proxies for it, okay, which is a lot of what modern warfare is nowadays. And so the first proxy that Iran had was Hezbollah, who are in the northern front with Israel in Lebanon, southern Lebanon. And then the second proxy that Iran was able to mobilize were Jihad, Islamic Jihad, and more Hezbollah fighters that they were able to bring through Syria to the border with Israel as well. The reason was that they assisted Bashar Assad during, the Arab Spring. They basically kept him alive. They kept him where he is right now. And he's probably one of the few Arab leaders who survived the Arab Spring because of Hezbollah, because of Iran and their support. So they have full access to Syria all the way to Israel, creating another front. Then you have Jordan signed a peace treaty with Israel. I don't remember the date, but it's been a country that have a pretty stable relationship with Israel since. And Jordan, predominantly, their population is Palestinian. So although the ruler of Jordan is not a Palestinian, I think he's, I don't remember the...
Alawak. He's Alawak.
Yeah, exactly.
So the same kind of family or people that the leader of Syria is. These come from, I guess you'd say, like they're a little bit lighter skinned, right? They're the elites of this region, and they're descendants of French rules in that region.
And so Jordan has a lot of Palestinian population, but they're at peace with Israel, and they're also a country that has basically very open to the West, right? And you have, training cooperations with the Americans and with European forces. And then you get to Egypt, right, on the south, which Egypt also has peace with Israel. And also Egypt is very open to the West. And they both, Jordan and Egypt, received a lot of funding also from America and from other countries in the world. Now, within Israel, the Palestinians and the Jews have always fought for what land belongs to them, right? And so the Palestinians claim that the entire land of Israel belongs to Palestinians, and the Jews claim that the entire land of Israel belongs to Jews. Whereas, thousands of years ago, both of them lived there, but, people want self-determination. That's really how Israel was created. So the situation as it is right now was that there is a predominant area of Palestinians in the West Bank, and one in Gaza, right, which everybody's heard of. However,
Michael, will you pull up a map of this area just so Bernardo can reference it if he wants to.
Yeah, what I'm getting to with this is that you have the West Bank, which is kind of like it goes in and out in this area. It's called the West Bank, and Gaza over there. And those areas are exclusively Palestinians who in the West Bank live under the ruling of the Palestinian Authority. And in Gaza, they live under the ruling of Hamas. The organization Hamas is also the government of Gaza. But in the rest of Israel proper, the country of Israel, you also have Palestinians who live there. But they are referred to as Israeli Arabs, and they have an Israeli passport. So a lot of people don't know that, right? They're like, oh, well, the Palestinians all live in the West Bank or in Gaza. No, in fact, the Israeli Palestinians live in Israel, and then you have Palestinians who live in the West Bank, but they don't have an Israeli passport. They have their own government, the Palestinian Authority. They have their own passport. And the Palestinians in Gaza also have their own passport, and they have their own government, which is Hamas. Now, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority are enemies also. And they fought for control of the Gaza Strip, and Hamas won. And that was in 2007, I believe.
Yep.
And since then, Hamas has been trying to also gain control of the West Bank. And that's been a fight that Western powers have... that's why Western powers give a lot of support to the Palestinian Authority. Even Israel supports a lot the Palestinian Authority because they don't want Hamas there, right? And so for many, many years, they've been trying to fend off that uprising of also Hamas in the West Bank. And during the last few years, when, like I mentioned, last 3 years, it's been really getting a little hotter in the West Bank, is because the influence of Hamas has also become more predominant in the West Bank. And the reason for that is because Hamas gets its funding from Iran now, creating the third front of proxies against Israel. So you had Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad in Syria, and you have Islamic Jihad and Hamas in Gaza. So you have the strategy of Iran during the last 10, 15, 20 years has been to encircle Israel with proxies that can wage war with him. And Hamas was the last key to that. The reason it was the last key, and it's maybe special, is because Hamas and the Palestinians are really Sunni Muslims, and Iranians are Shiite. And usually, there's a lot of conflict between them.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, they found that, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
So I'm actually glad we have this map up here. Where did the attacks occur both in Gaza and the West Bank?
No.
Were they isolated towards Gaza?
They're isolated towards the communities outside of Gaza. So there's no Jewish settlements
So
at
it came
all.
from Gaza
Right.
inland. It came from west
Right.
to east.
So if you look down from Sderot down through Be'eri, where they had one of those large Jewish massacres as well, you hear that in the news a lot, where they talk about the slaughter of babies and such. That was right there in Be'eri. That's where they came through. In 2006, 2007, Israel completely left Gaza. So we had settlements there in the past. 2005.
Yeah, I was there.
We left there completely. We pulled out our own people. It was actually a military operation. Put up a security fence. And shortly afterwards, Hamas took control. They took over. They kicked the rest of the PLO organizations, Fatah, out of there in their own bloody coup. And were then supported by their actual people as well and gained control of the Gaza Strip. And they've been isolated there since then.
How many people live in the Gaza Strip?
About 1 million.
Yep. So it is extremely densely populated. One of the most, and these are facts. Bernardo and I are only here to speak, our facts from our experiences, and like what we give you is what we know and what's the truth, right, to us. And yeah, so it is one of the most densely populated places on the earth, and there's about 1 million people there in that 100 miles or so.
Now you mentioned the disengagement, which I think is important. A lot of people don't know this stuff. But this area of the Gaza Strip, right, used to be like the West Bank. Correct. And if you look at the West Bank, you go a little up here, and you go to around the West Bank here. So the West Bank starts all the way from like Shechem or Nablus, Jenin. That's the north, and goes all the way down Hebron here. So the West Bank, if you were to zoom into this, you see that there's settlements that are both Israeli settlements and Muslim settlements, and they live next to each other, right? There's conflict there. And some areas after the Oslo Accords have only Palestinian ruling and security responsibility. Some areas share the security responsibility, and some areas is only Israel controls both the government and security. Now, the Gaza Strip was just like that. You had Israeli settlements and Muslim Palestinian settlements all living next to each other. There was conflict. That's in Gaza. Ariel Sharon, who was the prime minister at the time, decided that all the Israeli settlements that were in Gaza were going to be dismantled. The people were removed from their homes, and they were brought to temporary housing around the south of Israel. And that land was given to all the Palestinians to be exclusively for Palestinians, with the idea, I think, of the Palestinian state. I believe that was the idea, but it was for peace. Okay, so that land was given completely. Every Israeli was removed by its own government, moved back, and said, "Hey, here's Gaza, and this is your country now, or your territory." Okay. Hamas came to power. They murdered people from the Palestinian Authority to get to power, and then rockets started flying from Gaza, okay, which changed the picture completely. And when you talk about, hey, we want to maybe get more land here that can be exclusively Palestinian, well, now you really can't do it, because if we were to give away, a lot of land here and take off also Israelis, send them back to the west here, then we would have rockets from here too. So it puts the situation for peace in a predicament, really. And I feel like there's been positive actions from the Israeli government, at least to that point, if I look at it from a perspective of someone who's like, thinking of peace and giving land and all of this stuff. But it seems like the other side has not really taken advantage of it. That's my perspective.
The attack that came out of Gaza, did any of them try to make their way back, or was that a one-way trip?
That's how they got their hostages, right?
Oh, shit. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yep.
So a lot of them did go back, and some of them didn't mind not coming back.
Yeah, slightly different headspace when it comes to the value of life.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think it looks like now for Israel? What options do they have?
Well, we've talked about this a lot. Bernardo and I both.
He has one opinion. I have another opinion.
He has another opinion. I have an opinion right now that Israel's is up against the wall. They've never had this much support to really attack their enemy, which is Hamas, which is this terrorist regime, and they're going to go for it, right? Maybe on the back end have an option of trying to see if Fatah or the Palestinian Authority could come in and take over in the future. They've officially stated they don't want anything to do with it, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and ridding really the strip of Hamas. I mean, if you look at the death toll what Israel faced, I mean, I don't like putting lives for lives. Like, people it's being thrown around. This is equivalent to 40,000 Americans being killed during 9/11.
Well, it helps people it gives them some context.
So that's why I'm saying that, right? I'm giving that context. So this is unfathomable for Israelis.
It's actually, I think we actually should highlight those numbers, and I've seen them too.
Right.
I think with the death toll sitting at where it's at, which I believe is over 2,000, would be equivalent of the U.S. on 9/11 losing about 80,000 lives.
Correct. It's similar to Pearl Harbor. It really is a true Pearl Harbor or worse event that Israel has faced. And there literally is nobody in Israel that hasn't lost somebody or knows somebody that's been lost. That doesn't exist. So you have a country that is facing that. So I believe they're going to go in and rid Hamas. But it's going to be a bloody war that Israel hasn't faced since the 60s or 70s, honestly, and we've never had to occupy a land to the extent that we'd have to in this operation.
Well, they tried in Lebanon. Right.
We tried, and it didn't fend well for us in the 80s either.
It didn't work well, and really the strategy of Israel militarily is very different than other countries. For example, Israel has a limited number of soldiers. Many of the reservists, at the end of the day, they're people who work, every day, maybe in industries and in jobs that push the economy a certain way. So if you have them now in service, that's going to affect your economy in another way, right?
Yeah.
So Israel can't really have a war that's longer than a month. At least that's how it's been for many, many years, the doctrine of national security. Secondary, the way that Israel usually worked in national security was to get effective intelligence, to get the early warning, as they called. So be like, hey, we have an enemy and we understand what they're trying to do all the time, which didn't happen here, and preemptive strike. And so before that enemy gets to a point where we won't be able to handle it anymore, we have to strike first. That was the national strategy of defense of Israel. None of it has happened in the last few years with Iran because, to be honest with you, And I worked in Dignitary Protection. I worked with Bibi. I went with him to Africa and to other countries for years. And his number one talking point was Iran and how much we need to worry about Iran and do something about Iran. And very, very little was done about Iran at the end of the day. Now, some of it is because influence from other countries, such as the U.S. There were presidents who didn't want anything done about Iran, and some who did. But at the end of the day, not a lot was done about Iran. And there was no preemptive strike, right? And I think what happened here in the South, and the reason it's so powerful, I don't like comparing, it's like, I don't know how many people in France or in the U.S. or whatever. I think it doesn't matter if it was 15 people. At the end of the day, there was an intelligence failure. There was a loss of trust in the IDF and the way they responded. And the crimes that people suffered there, I mean, you're talking about children were bound together and killed. Children were forced to see their parents die before they were killed. I mean, how do you send someone to heaven like that? Imagine the type of stuff that must be going on in that room. People burned alive, like so many bad things that are confirmed. I can send you a document right now with images, with evidence of people bound to get and how it happened. And I'm not talking about things that people comment, right? Like, oh, I heard someone told me that they did this. No, this is the stuff that I can tell you happened 100%. And it's just, it's such it's a powerful pain for the country, right? Because the citizens in the South, they've been overlooked for years. They're the ones that get the rockets all the time. They're the ones that get the danger. And then the Israeli government is like, oh, we're going to stop this. They bombed Gaza. A couple times they went in, but it was a reduced entry, a limited penetration. And in the end of the day, it just comes back a few years ago. They tell, oh, we're going to buy you guys safety for a few years. Well, now, I mean, from the perspective of the population, they're supposed to do something serious, You have to really get rid of Hamas. But my theory is that it's not going to happen. And
really? Why? How so? Or I should say why. Why do you feel that way?
I feel that way because, first of all, I think that I don't understand. I mean, it's taking them too long. They should have gone in already. They should have started working on the ground with boots on the ground, right? Especially if you're talking about hostages and things you want to get. Although hostages is the key element here, but the next thing that was strange about this event was that when the U.S. came with the, with the plane carriers,
aircraft carriers,
I think that changed everything to me because if you're the U.S. and you're bringing the plane carriers here, right, which is a huge movement, and now they're funding Israel also with $2 billion or something like that. At the end of the day, that means the U.S. is going to call the shots. And imagine, okay, you're the most powerful country in the world. You bring 2 airplane carriers. Hey, it's for your support, man. You just do whatever you want and tell me when you're done. That's not the reality. The reality is that now the U.S. is going to call the shots, and the U.S. does not have the interest of the Israeli population as the top priority. They have the interest of whatever's happening in the region, right? For the U.S., it's important to come out on top and say, hey, we solved the Middle East problem, because right now the president looks bad in that sense, right? Like, look what happened in the Middle East. Things are coming back, and they weren't like that. So they need to regain control. Regaining control doesn't necessarily equate with what the population of Israel wants. On the other hand, it needs to be quick, right? There's a lot of things that are happening, and there's going to be a lot of criticism of it, and so you got to do it quick. So in my opinion, what's going to happen is the way we call it in Israel is chetzi ziyun, so it's like half a fuck. And
just a tip.
I think that the Israeli, they have to go in, but I think they're going to go in, at a limited distance from the border. And I think, they're going to take out some tunnels, and there's going to be some stuff in the media. It's going to be like, oh my God, what a good job they did. I think the hostages are going to be released by negotiation. I think Israel's going to have to release many, many thousands of prisoners that they have from terrorism activities. And they've done it in the past. It's not like the first time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to happen, because I think that that's how it's going to turn out. I think that there's a lot of noise. I waited for Hezbollah to do something, and it was strange to me that they didn't act at the same moment that Hamas did it. I was like, why is Hezbollah not also doing the same thing in the north? Because that's, if you really want to, make it even more contundent victory has to come from the north as well, right? Hezbollah waited. Now they're in a position where they're just taunting Israel, right? Oh, a rocket from here, a rocket from there, but it's not what Hezbollah can do. It's the same strategies. They're capable of taking control of settlements in the north, all the way probably to the Galilee and to the Tiberias or places like that. Much better than Hamas did now. So it's going to be way worse. And they haven't done anything like that. And they're throwing some threats, but it's changing. It's like, oh, well, just don't touch Iran, we won't act, or, finish what you're doing in Gaza. So they also waited a long time, and Israel waited a long time to go in. And it's not because they don't have the plans. Like the plans to take over Gaza, they're in a cabinet somewhere. You just pull them out, man. It's been like that for years. So it's more of there's negotiations, there's bluffing going on behind the scenes. And I think that now the U.S., with all the involvement they publicly did, they're going to be calling the shots there. And I don't think their interest is what we think is going to happen. So that's my opinion.
Do you think Hamas acted knowing that would probably be the case, that they could draw it out, make it more of an international affair?
Yeah. But it was all, and here's the pivot point, right? For Hamas being or presenting itself as an organization fighting for Palestinian resistance, really what they did was just they were doing Iran's bidding. I mean, tell me what part of what happened and what's happening now made Palestinian lives any better? Nothing. They're worse off than they were a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, for sure.
And probably for the foreseeable future. So what part of what they did was any victory for the Palestinian people? It wasn't. It was a victory for Iran. They made Israel, all the conflicts that are going to be in the population here, people disappointed of their government. They're probably going to sack Netanyahu and all the other heads. They made the U.S. look weak because they lost control of the Middle East. They put so many, relationships and things at stake in the entire world. The peace with Saudi Arabia that was coming, the Abraham Accords. So many things are in check because of this. It makes Iran look way powerful to other potential partners that they may have. So I think they were just doing Iran's bidding. That's the way I see it. And it's unfortunate because innocent people on both sides pay the bill.
For sure. Going with your theory, how would you eradicate Hamas out of Gaza?
All right. So a military operation in the past, all military operations in the past that we've conducted in the Gaza has literally just been setting up pretty much security barriers, right? We did not go into Gaza City. We did not go deep into that urban warfare, which everybody honestly dreads, and weed out Hamas one by one. We pretty much, what we did is we pushed them back so rockets were no longer capable of reaching our cities. A military invasion would have to sweep the entire country. It would take heavier losses than Israel has ever seen. It would be long-term, something that we're not set up to do, but would have to do. And I believe it would take American support to keep Hezbollah and other axes out of the playing ground so Israel doesn't have to fight a war on two sides.
So you're talking about literally clearing it street by street.
That's the only way they could do it. There's no other way.
And tunnel by tunnel, don't forget.
Exactly.
Yeah, that three-dimensional battle space is challenging, to say the least. I could almost see it from a tactical perspective, actually probably leveling up almost to like an operational or strategical perspective. Mm-hmm. I could see Hamas trying to incite a response that would have a level of, to do that, and this is, I don't know how to explain to people who have never been in an environment where you have to separate people that look identical but determine who is friend and foe and make decisions upon that. And not only move through that environment, but occupy that environment, work in that environment long term when you don't know the person walking up to you, again, friend or foe. It's incredibly complicated. I could see Hamas. I could see Hamas trying to antagonize this meat cleaver response so that they could point to the damage done by that from the Israelis, and it actually puts Israel in a place. Let's be honest, the news cycle would rapidly switch, and they'd be talking about the atrocities of the Israeli military and no longer be talking about the actions that began before that.
It already is.
And Israel would be in a generational uphill battle trying to defend the actions that they took. I don't know. I just don't know if people have the the care or knowledge or desire to look at it in that perspective. I could see them doing that. And again, it's not dumb. I personally feel that Israel is, as with most choices in war, you're stuck between a shitty choice and a shitty choice. There's not like, oh, this is the one that we really got to go with. You're literally looking at it from the perspective of which one of these can we live with in the long term.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's actually already happening now. Hamas has asked its citizens to not evacuate, to stop their evacuation.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely getting conflicting
They're ready
information.
for that.
And
Exactly.
It's systematic too. I mean, before I came to this point today, I was like, trying to read stuff, and I came upon a study that was published by NATO from, I think they were students from Duke University. I'm going to have to double check that because I don't think students in colleges can actually do things. But they came up with a study, and the study is about use of human shield by Hamas. And this is something, that is systematic from 2007 when Hamas came to power. And if you think about it, it's a win-win strategy for Hamas. Because on the one hand, if you use force, lethal force, you look bad, you can't justify it. People care about first impressions, right? They care about the images they see. They don't care about thinking what happened behind it. So that's a win for them. And if you don't use lethal force because you don't want to harm civilians, then that's a win for them too, because then they can, keep their assets and they don't have to worry about you bombing them. So it's the only strategy that makes sense for them, for Hamas. And if I was Hamas, I would do the same thing. It's unfortunate for Israel, and it's a perception that has infiltrated every single corner, and nobody's known how to stop it. As a matter of fact, I know a lot of people, if they studied in an American college here in the last 10, 15 years, I know that they think that Israel commits crimes against humanity, right? And I think it's, the people I see, for example, I grew up in Mexico. They're posting stuff like, oh my God, and, it's all about Palestinian liberation. And they can't understand how it's the farthest thing from the truth. Like, the last thing that's going to happen from this is Palestinian liberation. They're gaining nothing, unfortunately, those people. I wish they did. But, you can't really change that because a lot of people are talking heads, repeating talking heads. Right? So whatever the government is doing or the media is doing right now, and the U.S. media and international media, is only time. It's only giving you time to do something before it's no longer acceptable. And that's why I think they're not going to do more than that, because I think it's already been a while.
What do you think it looks like if we go to the extreme other end and Israel decides not to do anything? What position does that put Israel in with the Gaza Strip there?
One, I think it will definitely not ensure the politicians' positions. Regardless of the case, I could see the politicians, the generals, the military not remaining in their position, and that's something that everybody is motivated, right? Let's be real, all politicians are motivated by remaining in power. That is something that they're going to face. Secondly, I think more importantly, speaking as a resident of the south, of southern Israel, who lived there for years, it would lead to more bloodshed. This is not something that wasn't predicted. If you talk to anybody that lived in the south, they say, our greatest fear is a massive raid by Hamas coming over and killing our children. They feared this, and they knew this was going to happen one day, and it'll happen all over again.
Where on that map did you live?
So let's go down. If you want to zoom down to Ofakim, Michael, right?
Or Michelle, he answers.
Or Michelle. Okay, so Michelle, why don't we keep zooming in a little bit more?
Miguel.
And let's go to the left a little bit. And then let's find Nir Yitzchak. We saw that earlier. There we go. Let's go to Nir Yitzchak, and then let's go a little bit closer. And let's see if Cholit shows up. Keep going, but focus on Nir Yitzchak. Okay, Sufa. Let's go a little bit closer, focusing on Sufa.
That is damn near right up against Gaza.
There we are, Cholit. That was my home right there, about 1.5 kilometers from Gaza. Waking up to go to the army on a Sunday morning, I'd hear the prayers. That's how close.
There's a supermarket and a school there. Wow.
Not really a supermarket, more of like
damn, Michael's going deep right now.
Yeah, so let's go deeper. Let's go deeper because you
might be able to see the tunnel.
Let's get elbow deep up in this thing.
Let's
Michael.
go to Cholit, which
the whole hand.
Yes. So that the community is called Cholit, which means sandy kibbutz.
They named a community Sand.
Yeah, because that's what it came on.
That is not original.
Not at all, right? So they were originally
Dune, at least call
Yeah.
it Dune.
They were originally a community in the Sinai. So Israel occupied parts of Egypt after a war. They gave that back for land. This community was moved to this uninhabited area near Gaza, not in Gaza, and they made a community out of it in the 80s.
Back out a little bit, Michael. I just want to see where that border. Wow.
Yeah.
That is close.
So I would literally be serving like a few miles from home sometimes.
So what does this look like for, I'm assuming the vast majority of the reserves in Israel have been called up at this point.
I hardly have one friend. I don't think any of us have friends that aren't in the army right now.
No, yeah, there's
Everybody.
I disagree. There's a lot of people who haven't been called up, including myself, and I even know people in Israel who've been turned away from reserves.
Well, that's because they're at capacity.
Well, but okay, well, they're not supposed to be at capacity.
True, but they're at that point.
There's a lot of issues with that because it's part of the preparation of the IDF, right? Like, for example, we've been there's people like sending gear and fundraising and all of that, and that shouldn't happen right now. Like, we should be fundraising for the communities of the south of Israel that got affected, and not for the IDF to have a helmet. Like, it's just there's organizations that are supposed to do that, and they didn't do it. Someone was pocketing their, some bonuses in addition to the $250,000 a year salary, and that didn't happen. So, in addition to that, they're not calling all reservists yet. And I heard from someone who's like, well, when shit hits the fan. And I was like, well, hasn't shit hit the fan already? Like, what else needs to happen?
Plus, they need to be ready when shit hits the fan, not
Exactly.
getting called up
That's
when
a good
shit
point.
hits the fan.
So I don't know what's going on with that, but I know I can tell you probably close to 20 people that I know that are not serving right now, both abroad and in Israel itself. People who flew trying to get somewhere because nobody called them, and they're trying to just volunteer with someone. And, you could do things like that, but it's unfortunate to me that it's such a chaotic situation.
How hard is it for residents of Gaza to get out of there right now?
So right now is a different story.
Yeah.
Right now, they are.
Well, I think everything's kind of a different story.
It
over
really
there right
is.
now.
So right now, they're at the mercy of Egypt. Egypt has a good portion. If you want to go ahead, Michael or Michelle, look at that border.
Or Miguel.
Or Miguel.
We're really exploring the
All right,
space.
so let's look at that territory between Egypt and Gaza, that border. So that's at the top left. So that Rafah, that whole area, that's controlled by Egypt, that whole line. Egypt refuses to allow people from Gaza into their country.
Historically or right now?
Historically and right now.
Okay.
And same with residents of the West Bank and Jordan. The Palestinian people are unfortunately, the Arab world many times looks away from actually helping them. They'll fight for them, or they'll invoke like words of war for them in support, but when it actually comes to helping them, they turn their backs on them many times. So Egypt holds a massive border with Gaza, but will not allow its residents inside of it. Obviously, Israel is not going to allow residents of Gaza into the country, into Israel right now. Now, during peacetimes, relatively peacetime, there is supplies, people and supplies that cross daily from Gaza into Israel for medical treatment, for work, for university. That all happens.
It's
right?
tens of thousands.
Like literally
working
daily, because
Israel
I've been on
every
that
day.
border and I've supervised like that area. That happens. But right now, it's all up to God. It's all up to Egypt.
Do you think it's worth the risk? Because obviously the risk would be if Israel were to allow that, the wrong people would be able to come through. I'm just trying to think of watching traditional media.
Right.
And I personally, people can do it if they want to, I take what I see on traditional media sources. I almost take all information with a little bit of a grain of salt at this point. Give it a little bit of time, try to confirm it to the best of your ability. It seems like there's plenty of people that do want to get out. A military operation, at least clear of most of the civilians, still not going to be precise, but probably will be better from an optic perspective from Israel. I wonder if the juice is worth the squeeze to allow them through, accepting the risk that there probably are going to be people who are going to cross looking just like any other citizen, refugee, whatever you would want to count them as, that have other than positive intent behind them.
But also from a perspective of Egypt, I mean, they're just not ready to accept now 1 million people. They're adding 1 million people to Egypt because no one can tell you they're going to go back to Gaza.
And, and Israel can't accept that risk of letting those people in through those borders. I mean, honestly, that entire border right now is all military. I mean, they're evacuating communities as far as Sderot.
I wonder what the greater risk is, though. The small percentage of people that could make it through that would be agents of Hamas,
right,
or a large-scale military operation where the national media is now showing the results of Israeli kinetic activities on civilians.
Mm-hmm. And Israel has told the residents of Gaza to head to a direction, right? It's not like they haven't said where they're going to invade from.
Well, and
they've
that's
made
part
that pretty
of
clear.
That study, the human, how do you deal with an organization using people as human shields?
Right.
And some of it is how you communicate with people, like how you tell them, hey, what our objective is, right? But another thing that no other country has done except for Israel, and I when I was in the military and still today, I think it's a lot, man. Like, what else can you do? They hack TVs. They tell everybody, hey, you need to move because we're going to bomb this area. They drop pamphlets, people to read on the street. They're like flying, and they pick it up and says, hey, get out of here, go north or go south because we're going to bomb. They call people in their own homes. Like the same security agency that maps out and has intelligent network can tell you this family lives in this house. We're going to call them, and they call them and tell them, leave the building. On top of it, you have also the roof knocking. Okay? People don't know this stuff, and they think I'm making it up. It's true. You can find it. It's written about in many places, and I've seen it happen. A roof knock is an empty shell, basically.
Like a dud.
Fired from a plane, and it hits the roof of the building that they're going to bomb. So if you hear that, you actually have, I don't know how many minutes to leave the building before they actually bomb it.
It's assuming that Hamas would let you leave it.
Exactly.
Right.
Because, again,
that's the biggest problem there.
They're being used as pawns,
Right.
which is unfortunate.
Right.
And I saw that in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and it is so hard to explain to people. People don't understand how it's possible. Mm-hmm. How could somebody use an innocent person as a human shield? And it's an ideological difference in the value of life and what they think is going to occur in the afterlife.
Right.
And they see more value to it because, people in general, humans, the minute you touch the kids, that's the red line, right? So, all the people who hate Israel and hate everything, what do they say? Israel's killing kids, it's killing kids, it's killing kids, right? Why are people so upset with Hamas? They killed our kids, they kidnapped our kids. Everything is very emotional around kids. Mm-hmm. And there are kids who die in Gaza, and it's very sad. I wish it didn't happen. But they've developed it into a public relations fundraising operation. And you see now, for example, and it's not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, that Hamas actually stages dolls and a plethora of cameras just filming someone kind of like he's doing an action movie. I'm not saying there's no baby deaths. I 100% I'm not saying that, and I'm sorry for each and every one of them. I wish it didn't happen, but I think it's become a commodity for Hamas. Using it as a human shield, and that I think that's the reality of it. It's sad.
I want to preference a quote by one of Israel's former prime ministers, Golda Meir, which for modern days. So she said, "We'll have peace with the Arabs when they love their children more than they want to kill us." That was said in the 60s or 70s, right? So really, we'll have peace when Hamas and extremism goes away and the people of the region have the ability to love their children more than they want to kill Israelis.
Do you think that's possible?
Wow.
Yeah, I think everything's
possible,
but you need the right incentives.
Yep.
So what you need is a government of Palestinians who wants a good life for Palestinians, and the money, you can find the money, right? So you'll have someone who come up with a deal, and they'll see that it's worth it. How did Israel make peace with the Arab Emirates? Like, why would they be, in peace now? It's because there was a win-win situation for both of them. You make the deal, right? But Hamas doesn't want a deal. And so you can't.
And Iran doesn't want a deal either.
Iran doesn't want that deal, so it's not going to happen, right? But until you find the right deal and the right people to deal with, it's not going to happen. But the minute it does, then at the beginning it will be very weird. and eventually through generations it will become something that is permanent. I think it is possible, but it's extremely hard.
And I believe, this is where Bernardo and I disagree, I believe the time is now. This is the only opportunity we're going to have to rid Gaza and free the people from Hamas. And so, the next coming weeks or months, it's I don't think any situation endgame is going to be good for anyone. But I believe we have a chance.
Do you think it's possible to destroy an ideology through military force and firepower? I've had a bunch of these conversations recently with my friends.
Right.
And it's so one of the.
What do you believe?
I don't think it's possible. So one of my friends brought up, well, it defeated Nazism. And it did locally. It crushed Nazism in Europe. There are some fucking idiot Nazis here in the U.S. There are still people. What the fuck word is that? There are still people.
It's okay.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Yeah. There are still people that believe that shit. So even though it worked in an we're talking Europe, so a very large isolated area, the military might did in fact destroy that. Imperial Japan would be another example of that. But those beliefs, they live on globally. I think it can work locally, but the problem is if it continues globally.
Yeah, I agree with you.
No, for sure. And I agree with you. Listen,
I think you can only fight ideas with ideas. You can't
for
really...
sure. Like growing up in America, from a very young age, I was introduced into how morbid it is, honestly, to be a Jew. My grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, and she was messed up. Like, she was taken to a concentration camp at 14 when France was invaded. So I remember being 3 or 4 years old. She pulled me into her room, and she showed me a picture of a few kids in pajamas. And she pointed to each one of them, and she said, this one was killed, this one was killed, this one's killed for being a Jew. You're always going to have to deal with that ideology, with that belief. You're always going to have to be strong. You're always going to have to fight. And it's still here today, right? People are always going to want to attack other people that they find is a virus to them. So my belief, though, is it's the motivation. That ideology is going to stay in the Middle East, but if there's enough people, like Bernardo was saying, that have a better motivation to live a life and have their own determination, we could have a peace to some extent, knowing that we always have to be prepared and ready to fight that evil when it comes about.
Yeah, my worry about a military operation in Gaza is that you could radicalize more people with the intent of eradicating the ideology.
Right.
Yeah.
We struggle with that in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I believe that this is only going to be possible if they have their own internal leadership, see an opportunity, people that control the West Bank, to come in and seize control. That would be the only way this is even possible.
What do you think the likelihood of that is?
I don't know how likely that is. They have said they don't want to, but for the first time, they did denounce the killing of civilians, including Israelis.
It's funny that you would have to denounce that. Like, that should be a baseline, that's super fucked up and nobody should be doing that.
I mean, we have that problem in America, so...
We have a lot of problems in America, for clarity.
Yeah. Look, I also, for example, can tell you the Palestinian Authority, they're in a situation where, they're seen as the partner that can work that peace that we're discussing. On the other hand, the Palestinian Authority sees that if they don't also fuel this resistance idea, that they could lose the grasp of their own population,
right.
and Hamas would come in.
Yeah.
So they need to find that balance, right? And you have, Palestinian Authority actually gives money to people who martyr themselves in an operation. So they're also not the best people for us to work with. But they're the ones that the traditionally Western powers have wanted to deal with. I think that regarding what you're saying, the idea, Israel just bombing Gaza, I think they shouldn't do it. I think that we have a very limited result from bombing. I wish they didn't do it at all. I don't see why one innocent Palestinian needs to die from a bombing. I don't see the value in that. What we're getting is just destroying buildings from that. I think if they're going to do something, it should go by foot, just like you said, street by street, tunnel by tunnel. Get rid of Hamas. But bombing is sort of like what the Israeli government has determined that is what they can do to give satisfaction to the Israeli population in a way. Like, hey, look what I did. I took the assets of Hamas. Honestly, I think Hamas is in tunnels. Like, I don't think they really care that all those buildings went down. It's
They
the
may be
houses of some of them. It's certainly offices, things that help them with things. But at the end of the day, that's just a couple of years and it's back up.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying, too, about a tactical response via, bombing, but a strategic or operational victory for Hamas, because the buildings that are falling down are not falling down on somebody who is necessarily aligned with Hamas. But let's say a father watches a building collapse with his entire family in that.
It's horrible.
Yeah, he might be motivated to pick up
wish
a
that
rifle.
upon anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It just
I
feeds
don't
into
either.
your ideology, honestly.
Yeah.
But you know what does work from the sky is, and this is a tactic that Israel has used sometimes, and stops and uses it again. It was, the European Union doesn't like it a lot, but it's targeted assassinations of Hamas leaders and Islamic Jihad leaders. And part of trying to circumvent the use of human shield is to focus on precise munitions for the Air Force, right? And Israel has done that a lot. And so they can hit a moving motorcycle inside of one of the most populated areas in the world. So, and I think that does have an effect, because you take out, the heads of the snake, you're very precise, and there's almost no collateral damage from that. There is no collateral damage from that. So I think that I would like to see more of that, and less of like just bringing down buildings, because I don't think we're gaining anything from that. We're just fueling that idea. And I think that those from those strategies, that's what I think does have some results.
I agree with you. You could have mistakes and target the wrong things, which the U.S. has done from time to time. Because, again, war is sloppy. But I would absolutely rather see targeted munitions from either unmanned platforms or aircraft. The saying, why do you kill an ant with a hammer sometimes? Not that it makes them any more dead. It's so the other fucking ants pay attention.
Yeah.
You see the leaders of these organizations on their motorcycles vaporizing, and nothing else is damaged. It's like, maybe I don't want to be part of that particular organization and ride my moped.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Vespa even. I don't know what you guys are into over
But
there.
the problem is the
two-station
tunnels.
Hebrew.
The issue is the tunnels. They're just, if they're in the tunnels, you can't do that.
Can't do anything. I mean, you have bunker busters and such, but,
Oh, that goes back to being imprecise,
Right,
and what's
exactly.
above the
Because
tunnel. And
you have
all
to
goes
be able
down.
to tell where exactly the tunnel is from the sky.
and who is in there and who they are with. Because if they're smart, one of the challenges with precise and targeted ordnance that I know that U.S. and many other countries have faced is, one of the biggest mistakes I think people can make in warfare is to underestimate their enemy and dehumanize them. Oh, they're just stupid. Like, 2023, they're probably paying attention too. So what do people start doing? They start traveling in vehicles full of kids, vehicles full of women. They only travel with large groups of people that are innocent to deter an organization or military or a government from taking that action. So it's this chess game back and forth.
Yeah.
American hostages,
For
German
sure.
hostages, international hostages.
Right.
I mean, they're definitely not in buildings right now. They're all in tunnels. That's a fact.
I mean, from a tactical perspective, you would be not smart to have them anywhere but a tunnel, where you have an isolated and controlled entry or ingress and egress points. I mean, from a tactical perspective, that's what you would have to do.
And they know their enemy very well. Israel is really, its core values do come from Judaism, which has extremely high value on human life, both physical life and also like spiritual bodies. So Israel has been known to give hundreds of soldiers or terrorists back for bodies, just of their people. We traded close to 1,000 convicted terrorists for one soldier. That was
Really?
he was alive. His name is Gilad Shalit, and he was held captive, I believe, for 8 years in Gaza.
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
8 years. He was captured in a cross-border raid very close to my old house, taken in to
He was
Gaza.
a tankist.
Yep. He was a tankist. They killed his
Really,
team.
ripped him out of the tank?
Yep. Yeah, they attacked. I mean,
Well, they shot a rocket at the tank, and he was injured but not killed.
he went through the escape hatch of the tank. They took
Okay.
him. The rest of his team was killed. And for years, his face was all over Israel. Like, it was rallies for him. Bring back Gilad, bring back Gilad. And finally, they made that prisoner swap. Actually, when I went to university, I did my tests with the special kids, and he was actually taking tests with me, and he was like a national hero and a national face.
What do you mean you took tests with
Well,
the
I
special
got a little
kids?
extra time. Like, I'm a little dyslexic, a little different, right? So we went to the special room.
So that's what it is.
And I know, right? But hey, 3.0, all right, honors, almost.
Is that out of a 10, or what are we talking about?
It depends on the day, right? So, anyways, so we did that. And so now think of that. We gave 1,000 convicted terrorists away for one guy. We have 250 hostages, plus countless bodies.
The hostages are going to complicate things for sure.
Well, and before we started talking, there's the Hamas actually already made a request, and they said we want 6,000 prisoners for. They say they have 200 to 250 hostages.
6,000.
So they're starting to negotiate, which is where I think it's going to go. And I think once hostages are released, then you can justify the half fuck.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And again, bodies as well.
I mean, there's no good choices. I can, from somebody who would want nothing more than to wipe these people off the face of the planet, not that I would approve the plan, but I could see a plan where, you know what, we're killing everybody, and the hostages are probably going to die too. The problem is the consequences of that. That's a shitty choice. 6,000 people swap for 250 is a very shitty choice as well. And it also sets a precedent for future things like this and repeating this ad nauseum into the future.
And we're here today.
That's what I'm saying. It's shit choice between shit choice. And what sucks is what I think will be lost is that, Israel has some very difficult decisions ahead of them, and they're responsible for the outcome of those. But Hamas is also responsible for the outcome as well. Say the decision is made where they're going to go in and they are going to turn this into a parking lot, and the hostages and the Palestinians that are not being allowed to leave are going to die. At the end of the day, I look at that as that's on Hamas's shoulders for the environment that they created and keeping them in there. They're responsible for that. And on the same other side of that coin, which is the same coin, Israel's responsible for the actions that they took, and that is going to be so galactically messy if they go that path in the global media.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a shit show at the end of the day. Any decision that Israel takes is not going to be the right decision in the eyes of the world.
Yeah. Antisemitism.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a lot of ignorance about things. A lot of people are critical of Israel. Doesn't mean they're anti-Semites. And I think, I've heard many times, you can't criticize Israel. I think people should be able to criticize. I'm the first one to criticize Israel. I left Israel because there's things I didn't like about Israel.
Anytime somebody tells me that I can't do something, I take a really hard look at why they're saying that.
And I've spoken to a lot of people about that. I'll tell you from the perspective, more of the liberal criticism comes from the ideals of colonialism and occupation, which is very strange to me. It seems like they can only see things from those parameters. But colonialism, what colony is Gaza? Like a colony of Israel? If it was, then you would have a government that's pro-Israel, because that's how colonies work.
Well, I think the lens of colonialism brackets it so it's easier for people to understand, who don't want to dive in deeper to the complexities.
But it also claims that all Jews come from Europe, right? It negates the fact that Jews are Arabs. The majority of the population in Israel are Jews who come from Arab countries. They're not Jews who come from Europe.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know that, but there's people that traditionally have some connection to the Middle East, to the Levant, to all this area of the world, and they happen to be Jewish. There was Jewish in Iran, there was Jewish in Yemen, there were Jewish in Morocco, in Egypt, in wherever, even in Ethiopia,
we have Jews
in
that
Africa.
are black.
So a lot of people don't understand that, and they go for the colonialism as perspective. So that, I think the facts are wrong, and those people are just ignorant. Then there's another side that's more conservative or traditional, who comes from the perspective of America first. And I think they're right, man. I'm all about America first. I don't think America should give money to Israel. I think Israel should be strong enough to stand on their own. That's my idea as a person who served there, who fought there, and as a person who lives here now. And but then there's also ignorance there, because on the one hand, you assume that Israelis want your money and that's all they want, which is not true. And on the other hand, it also lacks perspective into what is American foreign policy. It's buying influence. That's what America does all over the world. Israel's not the only country that gets money, right? Or Ukraine. Egypt gets money, Iran gets money, and Gaza gets money from the U.S. So they give money to everybody so that they can buy influence. That's how it works, right? And that's the strategy of foreign policy of America. A lot of the credit that Israel gets, by the way, it comes under the form of credits to buy military equipment from the military industrial complex of America. So it's fueling the economy, and hey, maybe there's certain interests that are pushing for that within America. Not necessarily the Jewish lobby, as everybody thinks. It could be the industrial complex lobby. Now, I think a lot of people don't know that stuff and don't think about it that way. And still, there's things that are wrong. Like I said, I wish things were different in certain cases for certain things. But a lot of people who are critical of Israel come from those two main areas, and that doesn't necessarily make them anti-Semites. You know, I don't like calling everybody an anti-Semite. A lot of the Jewish defensive positions are to say anti-Semite, shut up, you can't be, no, cancel. It's
the same as calling somebody. It's the same thing as calling somebody racist, or you're a
Nazi.
You're a fascist.
Yeah, yep. Definitely.
While using fascist tactics to call.
I'm not for that. I think if you want
to, it's the easy way to shut it off. Right. It's an intellectually.
But it doesn't actually shut it off. You spoke about ideas. It throws it under the rug. Yeah. If I want to show you why Israel is valuable or why Jews deserve some sort of respect or dignity, then I have to prove that with actions because it's earned. So I believe in that. That's how I live my life. I think a lot of people like Richard and other Jews do that. And that's what we should really strengthen and push, not just, canceling and saying, hey, you're an anti-Semite because you don't agree with me. And, I can see where that comes from.
I have heard the term anti-Semitism a lot the past week. I actually can't put a finger on even one place that I've heard it because I've heard it that many times. And the narrative has been there is a drastic and consistent increase in anti-Semitism in the Western world. And I believe that they're not associating it necessarily with just this, but just in general.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
So Bernardo and I agree and disagree on quite a few things, right? I think at the end of the day...
But we still love each other.
Most days we do.
Well, the truth is I met him yesterday in a casino here in Kalispell.
Obviously.
Yes. He owes me money. He told me I'll bring it to the podcast.
He's not even from Israel,
He still owes me $38.
He said he's from Mexico.
No, he's
and
from
a
Mexico.
breakfast burrito.
Exactly. Let's be real. Anyway, so anti-Semitism. I truly believe that anti-Semitism has been on the rise for years now. I think a large majority of it has been blanketed by a hatred for Israel. So it has been used as a vessel, criticizing Israel and the Jews that do support Israel as the means to obtain it. From my experiences, let's use my experiences honestly to explain my take on anti-Semitism in America. So I grew up just as a normal American. My mom was originally born in Israel, but she grew up in America. My father was from Mexico.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up originally in Los Angeles, and then
nice.
Yeah, well,
just joking. It's
no,
not.
This is what happened. So, O.J. Simpson actually killed his wife a few blocks from my house.
I don't know if you know this, but he was found innocent. So that's an allegedly.
I was.
The glove doesn't fit.
Miguel, you must acquit. You must acquit. Sorry, I'm going to get sued by O.J. now. He's coming for me.
He probably is too broke to sue you because he's lost the civil portion of that trial.
I remember very clearly at 5, because like I said, I grew up very morbid. Like, also, we call myself a third generation Holocaust survivor. Like we're kind of used to death. We walked down the street after.
Hold on, though. I'm going to stop you there. Yeah. How often is that talked about or spoken about? Not that I would ever want anything like that to be remembered, but is it also the nucleus of your family, who you think you are? That's a double-edged sword for sure.
It's not. I don't believe it's spoken about enough, honestly. Jews and survivors of genocide in general. I'm not talking just as a Holocaust, a grandson of a Holocaust survivor. I'm talking about survivors of Rwanda, of Eastern or Central Asia, Cambodia, right? Like, it is not spoken to that people get to the boiling point where they're ready to systematically destroy another group of people that is their neighbors. It's not spoken about. It's trauma that is generational, that I believe all communities that have been affected by genocide experience, and it's long-lasting. So Yeah, growing up in a house with a Holocaust surviving grandmother, when it was told like we're not going to speak about this, we're just going to be strong, we're going to carry on. It continues to affect us. Like I feel like I'm one of the first generations to get away from that trauma to an extent. Just my mother still faces issues from being raised by a mother from the Holocaust. A majority of children of Holocaust survivors were not on good terms with their parents, honestly.
Really?
Very much so. I mean, I know this because I volunteered many times in high school to speak with survivors, and they didn't have contact with their kids.
Wow.
You have to realize what they went through changed their life forever.
Oh, it changed their life. It changed their optic on humanity, I'm sure.
You know, when you think you had a hard dad that's just like, toughen up and walk to school, it goes beyond that. We're talking parents that would hide food, they would hide money, not have any emotions because it was stripped from them. So that's something that's long lasting for communities that have been affected by genocide. So does that answer your question there of how it affects you to?
It does.
Me? Okay, cool.
It does for sure.
So
how have you felt in your own personal experiences, how have you felt the rise of that over time?
The anti-Semitism?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So it started out I grew up in Oregon, by the way, because OJ killed his wife down the street from my house.
So you moved to Oregon?
We did. I went to the crime scene at 5.
Much better.
Is there less white Broncos in Oregon?
There are. So I went to the crime scene at 5. I saw the blood.
Shut the fuck up.
No, I'm not. That's what I'm telling you. My mother was.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I have so many questions.
That's what I'm saying. We have to back into this.
But why would you go to the crime? That's optional.
That lack of like giving a fuck, to be honest, about death to an extent. To like
How
that
soon after the crime were you at the crime scene?
Less than 24 hours.
What?
Yeah.
See, that glove might fit your hand.
It might. I mean, I was 5, man. It would not. It would not.
It would be
I also have an alibi. We were in Catalina Island the night before and came home that morning. So,
did you come home that
scream this part also.
Did you come home that morning to go directly to the crime scene?
Well, Mom was like, you know what? Like this is like I'm saying, we're raised a little different when we're survivors. Like,
holy.
So we go down there, and I remember the red like the red bricks, right? It was like a red walkway, and this old lady going the blood, and like pointing at like dried blood on the concrete or on that walkway. So yeah, after that, my dad's like, let's go in the car and watch the police chase. Drove out to the Ralphs to try and watch the police
You were
chase.
also
yeah, of course,
in traffic trying to catch the police.
Yeah.
Man.
Anyways,
okay.
I don't know how much I like you anymore. It's crazy,
right?
man.
So then,
and you're 5.
5. Yeah, 5.
Cool.
Kindergarten-ish age.
Well, that was a fun day for you, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of cops there. Remember, their motorcycles all lined up. Hot dog vendors were coming out. It was a big spectacle.
Yeah,
America, man, America.
And, I know, right? Yeah,
It's entertainment at the best.
I don't know how this goes to the rise of anti-Semitism. Tell me
we're
more.
going to get there. We have time. We're going to get there.
We have all the time.
All right,
so the Broncos scared you out of L.A.
Yep.
You go to Oregon.
We go to Oregon.
Probably VW buses.
Oh, man, Oregon. Yes, we go to Oregon. Nice little suburb, 10 minutes outside of Portland is where I grew up.
Okay.
Right, and I grew up in when Jesus was in the White House. So during the Bush era.
Okay.
There was
Which Bush?
Second Bush.
Junior,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
He was funny.
Yeah.
He was funny
until he sent
some
you guys
ways.
to war for quite a few years.
Oh, he's funny, man. I
think
watched
Andy
those
might have
videos
experienced
on YouTube
some of his decisions
so many times.
to some light. So during that time, when I first saw anti-Semitism, honestly, was what it came down to. Jesus, you killed Jesus. The basic stuff that the Jewish kids are used to. That's no problem. My dad was not even Jewish. He's like,
that's a common thing for Jewish kids. People telling you that you killed Jesus.
oh yeah. Like my wife's from Argentina. She experienced it. Like that's not a big deal. We all know that.
Yeah,
like
right.
we're used to that. That's really not. My dad's answer. My dad wasn't even Jewish. He's like, you get a roll of quarters and you punch them in the face. That was my dad's answer.
Okay, so your dad, in my book, was going down a peg, taking you to OJ's crime scene.
That was my mom.
Your
My dad was
I feel
more
like,
sensitive.
Was there.
Yeah.
He was also there.
Yeah,
so
right.
he didn't push back against that.
No.
I can understand
Yeah.
why not, though, because women, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. The fact that he told you to give him the old right cross,
Yeah.
he's going back up. We're at neutral right now.
Yeah.
I might need some more stories
Yeah.
to figure out where I land on this guy.
on the parenting, how I'm here today. Yes. So that was the answer for that. You do that. So you did that. You did that throughout Cub Scouts, no problem. Boy Scouts, whatever. You grow up, you do boxing. You're a strong Jew, no problem. 17 rolls around, getting towards the end of high school. My mom says, hey, you know what? I'm going to send you to Israel to go see the motherland. Cool. What am I doing there? Well, I'm volunteering in the Israeli army bases. So there's a program actually in Israel where people from around the world could go ahead and volunteer for a summer for a number of weeks. You get a uniform. You end up in the storage in the warehouses, cleaning tank parts, helping out the soldiers. And I thought it was the coolest summer ever. I mean, I think my MySpace was on fire. I had an Israeli army uniform on. Israeli women are gorgeous. I fell in love with the country. I met all my family. It was great. Best summer of my life.
They're mean, though. The women are mean.
They're mean, but when you don't move there, they like you. It's when you move there and they know that you're not returning, they're not the nicest to you.
What do you mean they're mean?
Well, like what I'm saying, like they're tough. Israeli women are
a little edgy?
Very edgy.
They can like box you up to slap you around a little bit?
Depends how you like it.
They have no problem with that.
Yep.
Open hand. They're just going to hit you with an open hand.
Yeah,
all right.
Exactly. I come back. Cool. Awesome. Love Israel. Great experience. And at this point, I had never thought that people specifically did not like Jewish people for their support of Israel. So I enrolled in, it was just for being Jewish. There was no context of why. I enrolled in Portland State University, and I got involved with the Jewish community there. Said, hey, I was in Israel a few summers ago. It's a great place. Like, why don't we go ahead and put up some Israeli flags and do a Shabbat where we eat Israeli food? And I noticed our posters for the Jewish Student Union would get swastikas put on them.
Are you fucking serious?
No. I have still on my. I pulled up my Facebook the other day just to look at some of the old pictures. I hadn't been on in years, and I saw a birthright picture, which is a program that I think Bernardo went on, where they send Jewish kids to Israel for the summer. Do a swastika, basically Israel equals Nazism, and
Israel equals Nazism.
That's common. I mean, if you Google,
that is a really weird mathematical formula.
Well, it makes sense nowadays. Truth is very
mixed, and I consider that anti-Semitism. If you go ahead and you take a symbol of death and destruction to any people and you put it on on the symbol of the religion, that's a slap in the face. That's anti-Semitism.
I feel like anti-Semitism, racism, a lot of these isms, it's a walking, talking, mobile IQ test.
Good way of putting it.
I thought that. So I still want to think and believe that we are navigating the world with intelligent, empathetic, and compassionate people. It's harder and harder and harder to believe that.
I wish those people had the same compassion for Jews that I have for people under the rule of Hamas, of Palestinians, honestly. So facing that on campus, I was like, let's get a little bit involved. Let's see what we can do. So I organized some things. I brought in one of the first Arab politicians in Israel as a council general. They protested us. They tried to spit on him. I was looking at as a 19-year-old, having to hire security for some of our speakers from Israel because of the mobs that were coming through. And I was like, I'm over this. I'm going to move to Israel and join the IDF. And
they radicalized you.
I got radicalized, and I ended up in Israel 6 months later. And you don't obviously in Israel you don't feel anti-Semitism because you're in your bubble there.
Yeah.
But during my end of my service, when I was a reservist, I came back to America on a program where I spoke on college campuses, where I learned that not only had this happened at my university, but this was systematic. That it was constantly the fight for Palestinian equal rights equated the demonization of the Jewish people in Israel, where Jewish kids were afraid to walk around with Jewish stars, where Hillel houses, which are like Jewish community houses, they had students locked in them through mobs. It got to the point where many Jewish students would renounce their Judaism. They would never speak of being supportive of Israel in any way. Any support, any acceptance of the Jewish state was considered fascist. And that's where we are today.
And actually, the majority of U.S. Jewish support for Israel comes from older generations.
Correct.
So it's going to be the parents of the kids that you went to university with.
Exactly.
And within the youth, there's less and less support. Because of that, I think it's part of that guilt that, Americans have a lot of guilt about things. And for the Jewish community, that's where they feel their guilt because that's what they see. They're like, wait, they're telling me I'm all of these things. I want to make sure everybody understands I'm Jewish, but I'm just, a nice person here in America. I don't do anything wrong.
I would say I'm Jewish. You know
right.
what I mean?
Well, yeah. But I can tell you that there's other factors as well. I think he's brought up a really great, from personal experience, Other things I've noticed is, for example, I saw a study that says whenever financial situation in the world is shaky or starts going bad, the rise in hate for Jews goes up. Okay, so it kind of
because the belief is that the Jewish population is
This is something that we've dealt with
the
for
Jewish
thousands of
population
years.
is one of the. It's not the only one. It's not the only one. That's important to note. But it's one of the communities in the world that tend to succeed a lot in business. And the reason for that is because they stick together, they help each other, they teach their kids how to run businesses, and they have a good work ethic in that sense. So they've made wealth for themselves pretty much everywhere they've gone. That creates obviously jealousy and things like that, and so it may be associated to that. And I think that's a main factor for that. Now, another thing is that, and I was speaking about this, and this is rough. A lot of people are not going to agree with me, okay? Probably Richard's not going to agree with me.
Here we go. Yeah.
But I was mentioning how one of the things that I don't agree with Judaism is that, Jews refer often to themselves as the chosen people. And I think that's very arrogant. I don't like that because to me, this is my personal belief. It might be very cliche or whatever, but I don't see why, and I believe in God, but I don't see why it would be a God to only one specific type of people. I think that all humans are the same. We're created by the same force that is God, and I think that we all have value, okay? It's crazy because some people think I'm like hardcore something, but that's how I see things. So I never refer to that. And I think that positioning yourself as the chosen people oftentimes is antagonistic to people, and they're like, whoa, so who am I if I'm not part of your people, right? Like, I'm not special, I'm not something. And I think that also creates conflict and creates some hostility towards Jews. And then something I mentioned is that I think that everybody, not just Jews, should really earn respect by their actions, by their character. And I think there's many, many examples of Jews who have done amazing things for the world. But where do you see that in the news, right? We're not studying all the Nobel Prizes of people that have created things to help humanity, right, who were Jews, or all the inventions that we have nowadays that help humanity in technology or in medical advancements and things from Jews. We don't hear about that in the news almost ever. We hear about the bad examples of Jews, and they come one after another. You have, the 2008, the Madoff came on. Just recently, you hear everything that's happened with Jeffrey Epstein. And so it's easy to play that confirmation bias. Okay, so it's like, I think of Jews, and look, there it is. And he did that. George Soros, all right, who I hate him too. And what happened, by the way, George Soros, he hates Israel. But people don't know that stuff. Like, he's a very progressive liberal with a vision of Israel is no different than what you would hear in a university, So a lot of people associate all of those characters and all of their actions and the value of their person and confirm the bias and superimpose it on the entire population of Jews. So I think those are things that also matter in this perspective of anti-Semitism.
My question is, why can't I say I'm mourning the loss of people I knew on a community that I lived in without getting feedback from others saying, sorry for your loss, but your friends were colonizers.
Yeah, but that's just the mobile IQ test again.
Exactly. But this is the vast majority of people that we see in business world, that we see not just on universities. We're talking about in business. Like my wife works in corporate America. I work in corporate America. It's pretty prevalent for DI trainers, right? Diversity inclusion, right?
That's why Michael's here.
I know, obviously. He's kept his mouth shut relatively most of this podcast.
a
I'm
ginger
just
fuck over
observing, making sure that diversity and inclusion is being respected in this podcast.
appreciate
I
that.
hope you noticed that I called you Miguel.
Yeah.
I didn't assume you were a white American.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, actually.
Michelle could be a Spanish-American woman.
Could be. Depends what they want to be, the flavor. But why is it, though, that they could not say the terrorist actions of Hamas that killed 1,200 Jewish people and Arabs and Muslims, a lot of people, Thailand, a lot of people were killed, right? Was wrong. Period. Full stop.
That's crazy.
I don't have an answer for that because, for me, that's not a hard one.
No.
And I struggle to understand myself. I'm not even going to go out on a limb and try to understand other people. I wish it was different for sure.
I saw people at University of Wisconsin screaming, "Glory to the murderers! Glory to the murderers!"
It was a win.
I mean, I think it's crazy to justify, like, the end justifies all the means, right? And the ironic part is that there was no end. Like, they didn't liberate anything. Palestinians are not better off.
Palestinians are worse off right now.
And they're still celebrating a terrorist attack that was evil, man. Like, I saw a pastor saying that these people were basically taken by, like, an evil spirit. I can believe that, man. I really can believe that. Like, what it takes to do the things that they did, I really don't understand how a human can go that low. We've seen it with ISIS, similar things. Yep. And I really think it's an accurate description. But it's just become kind of like a condition, right? Like a habit to assume that things are a certain way. And the only thing that I could tell others is, hey, if you weren't there, or if you're not speaking to people who are there, if you don't, like, have critical thinking and explore and find things, and even if you do, like, just, control yourself, like, have emotional control to understand that things are never black or white. It's always gray. So if people don't have even those eurisms, right, that are, like, going to navigate you through life, it's like you said, the mobile IQ test, right? Like, I mean, how can you help these people? You just can't. And there's always going to be an excuse.
That's my worry, actually, more about AI. That it would bombard people with information that is false, that they would take action on it, and then, holy shit, the horse is out of the stable.
It's happening every day.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But then what's the other alternative? Do you turn all your shit off, and then you...
I think we have to have discussion. We have to start having discussions, right? Just like we're doing right now, right? We have to meet with our neighbors.
These don't fit on memes, though.
They don't.
This is
and
that's
the thing is, we're so
multi-hour conversation to put on a meme.
We have to make life decisions based on 5 seconds of a meme.
Do we? Though?
And that's what we do.
That's
we need
what
to alter
we
that
do,
course.
But do we have to?
We don't.
I don't think
we don't have to.
But like everything, memes are bad, but they're also good in some cases. Because I'm telling you, there's certain things that governments around the world want to do, and memes fight it. Like, they're actually not able to do it because memes go around. So it has good and bad things. Yeah. You just got to find the balance, man. If I say I got to find the balance, I always come out good. So it's all right. Miguel, right? Mm-hmm. Balance and diversity.
What's your take on this, Miguel?
The whole Israel...
No, just in general, finding a balance where we're going. Are memes positive to our society, or are they negative?
Some memes are very positive.
Can be.
Yeah.
Because they entertain the fuck out of me.
The ones with the cat, right? Those are the best ones.
They're can be very good at shaping what people think very subtly. Like, I have noticed even in myself, I've tried to be aware of, like, what I'm looking at. And I'll see something that I don't necessarily agree with, but I will be like, it'll will latch onto my brain a little bit. And then I'll catch myself thinking about it, like, oh, yeah, that is a good point, actually.
Like a sticky idea.
Yeah. And I think if you're not careful, you fall into these super niche spaces, even just on Instagram. These super niche spaces that aren't necessarily good and super, super extreme. And if you're not careful, you can very easily fall into that.
You've raised a good young man. You're doing your best.
I'm glad you guys are meeting him now, as opposed to just the weak al dente spaghetti noodle he was when I got my hands on him.
Oh, man, you're doing well. You're doing well. But it's the truth. I mean, let's also look at, like, your community. I think Bernardo and I are both members of your community. first responders, law enforcement, 2A supporters. Like, we're engrossed in an ecosystem that pretty much has one point of view.
You think?
I think so. I think we're more right leaning. Andy, you
on some issues.
Right.
I am fiscally conservative and socially very liberal.
Socially liberal. A lot of us are. We're like libertarians, right?
I actually think about, and I'm going to throw this number out there with no data to support it whatsoever. They're my personal beliefs. I think about 80% of the U.S. is actually probably has their feet on one side of the line, 1 foot on each side of the whatever, call it the middle. But I think that 20% that is so goddamn vocal gets the vast majority of the traction. And most people, I don't know about you guys, I get so sick of some stuff and I turn it off because I'm not interested in just living in this ecosystem of hearing. Like, if you only get your news from Fox News or CNN, which would be the access to Fox, I suppose, if that's the only data point, to me, that speaks a lot about where, people they're probably going to have both feet on one side of the line. I bounce back and forth between all of that stuff, and I try to look for stories that I find on CNN, and I'll look for it on Fox or USA Today or just fill in the blank and look through all of that stuff. And then try to do the best to bounce that against my own moral compass and make up my own mind as opposed to being told what I should think.
And where do you think you learned that? Like, where do you think you got that
That's
from?
very wise. I mean, if you open up your social media right now, your Instagram, what comes up?
Boobs and guns.
Like, is it boobs, guns?
That's
is it
obviously
naked girls
that's
and
probably
guns?
standard for most people.
a little bit of jiu-jitsu for you, but it's an ecosystem of your interests, right?
Puppies.
My buddy who was on the podcast not too long ago, he's
cool.
traveling, some jiu-jitsu.
No. But go on the search. Go on the search.
Oh, search.
Yeah.
Boom.
There you go. Boobs and guns.
No, I got
man boobs.
yeah.
A lot of men.
Those are called middies, man titties. I'm not like populated with a bunch of yoga. I got people tossing around a tennis ball, skydiving. It's going to be, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be heavy in bike crashes because I love reposting people killing themselves
That's actually
and Frenchies.
this is very concerning to me because when I open my search, it looks a little different.
It's yoga pants with people trying to tie their shoes.
Yeah. It's cats, right? Cats.
Yeah.
For sure.
I grew up in a household where there wasn't a defined, like a concrete, you have to think this way. Questions were rewarded. Asking why is a good thing. Figuring out what you want to do is your responsibility, not being, directed down this path. Like one of the questions I hate for our youth is, what do you want to do when you grow up? Don't fucking ask an 8-year-old that. They know what a firefighter is and like a cop. And they know maybe one day out of every year they're still shitting in their pants. Maybe you don't need to determine what you're going to do for the rest of your life while you're still having that happen. I was allowed to make mistakes, so I got to navigate it, micro mistakes, not macro mistakes. They're going to end me in prison at a young age. That type of stuff was rewarded, and I think it just kind of shaped me into the person that I am.
Yeah, so it's family values.
And I think that all represents your feed, that you don't have one certain direction on it, that you are informed, you are asking questions. But I'll tell you, there's not a lot of people like you out there.
I mean, my favorite question is why?
It's a
it's
great
being
question to
lost
start with
now.
it. It
Like,
has been
that's the
lost.
thing
We
that
don't ask
new
why.
generations don't have that.
We don't ask. We just assume what we're told and we go with it.
Michael, you're the youngest one in this room, I'm assuming. What are your thoughts on the question that he asked me? For putting it into the lens of you.
For what?
Where, your thoughts on where you get your information, what you question, what you believe.
How you question, what's
How
your
you
process
build an
of asking
opinion.
why?
Yeah, I always try to ask why for everything that's outside of my personal bubble, even in my personal bubble. But for the most part, it's people I trust, so I don't need to ask why as much. But anything outside of that, I just think there's always an agenda that somebody wants to push. So anything I see, even if I find myself agreeing with it, I need to be like, okay, well, let's take a step back and what's behind this?
Well, even your parents have an agenda, right? Your parents' agenda is to try to get you into life so you don't kill yourself. Hey, the stove is hot, don't touch it. It's I think another thing that helps me is I hate absolutes. I don't like terms like always and never because I don't think the world we live in is binary.
Yeah.
And I think because it helps people conceptually bracket things that they are looking for binary, even though I just don't, I haven't encountered anywhere in life where always and never has ever been true for me, which I think I just used an absolute to describe not believing in absolute.
It's all right.
So far in my life, I have found 0 and 100% to be inaccurate numbers on both ends of that spectrum.
I would agree. Very wise. And you've raised Michael very well to also think like that.
I mean, it's not all because young people in some generations they're like this. They ask questions
great.
and they're looking for something and they realize not everything's true. But other generations don't. Other generations really think that what they see is what it is, and they feel good agreeing with it because they feel like they're being rewarded somehow. Maybe they're popular. Maybe they're being, they feel like they're they're being compliant and it's like a good thing for them. They feel safe maybe doing that. Because, if we go back to what we were talking about, to some people it's just that. It's Palestinians and Israelis. Some people understand there's Hamas that's not representative of all the Palestinians and Israelis. And some people understand that Iran is in the picture somewhere and the U.S. is in the picture somewhere. But that's not everybody,
But they
right?
get there from asking.
You have to ask a lot of questions, and you have to...
Yeah.
Also, but you have to assume that not everything you see is true. And you have to be
100%.
suspicious of things that you see. And it's nothing wrong with being suspicious. It doesn't make you a person who's like, anxious or like a conspiracy theory. No, just realize that we're all humans. And a scientist can make a mistake. A politician certainly can say whatever he wants just to make you happy. And, people, sometimes they're like oblivious
and
to
their
that.
decisions are so definitive. I'm talking not just for the youth. I think we've made fun of the youth a lot. It's in all, like I had friends your age that I've lost this last week for literally saying, if you believe the actions against the Jewish and Israelis in Israel are justified, just unfollow me. And it happened. Not,
My question would be, do you think they were really your friend to begin with?
that's a hard question to ask, right? These are people that I've ate with, that I've broken bread with, I've had conversations with. So what is a friend? To what level? Are they very close friends? No. I have my circle. I have my brothers. I have my sisters. I have the people, they're at my wedding and such. But I mean,
that's
the
a
question
great
is, what's a friend, right?
Let me give you an example of that. Because I grew up in a school that wasn't a Jewish school, so I had a lot of friends who weren't Jewish. The first time I encountered something like that was before Facebook, Instagram, and that. I was like visiting France with this girl, and she was my friend from school. And we were just like in someone's house, and she turned around and she started screaming at me about Palestinians, because I had been in Israel already. She's like, I was like, what the hell is going on with you? Like, what is wrong with you? She's like, I'm sorry, this and that. I'm like, dude, like, I'm your friend. Like, what do you think I'm doing? That was the first time I encountered that. Then I had a friend who actually came to visit me in Israel. And this was when the Second Lebanon War happened. And he's like, I'm going to go visit you in Israel. He comes, he stays in my house. I took him everywhere. And this is a person, I love the guy. He was in Israel. He even went to the West Bank, and he saw like Ramallah and places like this. And then we had a great time. The war started. So there was like rockets being fired, and he had to leave. And so he was in the Israeli side getting bombed by rockets.
Yep.
He went back to Mexico, and suddenly I see him like posting like, Israelis are the oppression and I'm like, weren't you like here? Didn't you like see things the way that I saw him? I shared everything with you and everything, and it's just very hard, at the end of and there's nothing wrong with it. I still talk to him because I feel like, again, he can have his own opinions. The problem is with social media now, you see it so much and it triggers you so much, because that's what it's designed to do, that phone, that it breaks apart relationships. I've had people in my family who think I'm a redneck, things just because I like, guns and pickup trucks. Right?
Who doesn't?
Well, you have adopted that lifestyle pretty fast.
Right.
Michael drives a Subaru.
That is not true.
Are you trying to move to Oregon, Michael?
70-year-old woman.
That's my question.
Likes to go to softball games and drive his Subaru.
But friends who don't talk to me, or family who don't talk to me so much because of how politics is dividing people, and social media is the fuel for that. It just does it, man. It breaks
It's a great
it.
medium to divide us.
Yeah.
100%.
It really is. And if you look at, what it's designed to do, where your attention span and your time is the commodity that it's trying to absorb.
Right.
And like Michael said about memes, maybe it's just a sticky idea. There's fucking teams of people trying to figure out ways to keep us more on social media platforms.
Right.
And I'm as guilty of it. Trust me, I'm not trying to be altruistic here. I'm as guilty of doom scrolling through Instagram as anybody else. But if you don't recognize, what I would say is I'm a willing participant. Mm-hmm. I worry about the ones who don't realize that they're a participant in it.
Right.
Like when I'm wasting time, I'm pretty fucking aware that I'm wasting time.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's people who are not aware of it. That's crazy.
That's where I think it gets really dangerous.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
We need to talk about something funny, man, because I'm going to cry in about a minute.
You're going to be all right. You need
It's been a rough week, but we're getting there.
So what's your guys' focus on now? Obviously, we're here talking about what's going on there. What would you want people to know that you think is not being said? What is not being talked about? if you could sit people down, break bread with them, talk about what the situation, what would you say?
I mean, what we've done for the last few hours right now is honestly, we've talked about the situation from many aspects. Bernardo and I both have contrarian beliefs to an extent, but we were able to discuss it. I wish we had a Palestinian here as well that we could talk to and understand that the solution, the picture is not black and white. I will say from my experiences, Israelis sing songs of peace, including Israeli soldiers do. And that's literally, that is their I gotta stop saying literally. I'm in the pocket here, but that is on the forefront of all their minds. Like, all Israelis grow up knowing they have to go to the army. And I remember when I was a soldier, my adopted family, who survived this terror attack, thank God, lost a lot of friends, but they survived. They said, thank you so much for being here and serving our country. And I said, I'm doing it because one day your kids will have to do the same for us. They don't want that.
Yeah. I don't know a lot of people who've been around war that really wish for it. It's an idea as a young man that might seem very romantic.
It does, 100%.
And then it gets very non-romantic when shit hits the fan.
Once you start losing people, it changes things.
Yeah.
I think Bernardo and I are both, we've both discussed this openly. Like, it's hard for us not to be there. It eats our soul the last week it has. Checking our reserve status, seeing our friends go, knowing the people that are being buried right now. But we're very grateful we're not in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And that's something I actually want to put out there is we don't want this at all. But we do want Jewish and Muslims, Palestinians, all the ethnicities that live in the Middle East to have self-determination and to live their lives however they want it.
Do you think it's possible to have Jews and Muslims living peacefully in that area?
Yeah, of course. We live it every day in Israel.
There's examples of it.
There's examples. I mean, we served with Muslims. The unit that did when I was stationed outside of Gaza, throughout Egypt, the West Bank, we have Muslims. We have a special Muslims units that are literally trackers, Bedouins. They understand that landscape better than anyone will.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're used as trackers. We have an ethnic group called Druzis, which are ethnically, they're Arabs. They have their own religion, and they have mandatory service, actually, in the IDF. And there are a lot of Arab Israelis. So we have it in Israel. We don't have Jewish people living in other Arab countries freely, though, unfortunately.
Well, you asked about a message. So what I would say, the first thing I want to say is thanks. I want to say thanks to so much support that is in the U.S. exists. And there's people who really look at it and they're open-minded and they also understand. They get the feeling, right, of like what the values of our countries and things like that, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the United States. I think the United States is the biggest friend of Israel that's ever existed. I live in Texas. The amount of texts that I get from people who are not Jewish, and they're asking me about the situation, and they're telling me, hey, if you need something, let me know. What can I help you with? I'm sorry about your loss, and I'm sorry about this. It's overwhelming. So for the first thing I would like to say is thanks. And we spoke plenty about examples of things, but to those who are not aware, right, it's about understanding that not everything is black and white. There's gray, and also that it's so much more complex than you can think of, right? So he was talking about what it's like in Israel to be a Muslim, and there's always going to be things, that you can say, hey, this can be better, maybe this is not good. But yeah, at the end of the day, Palestinians who are Israelis, they have the best life for a Palestinian in the Middle East. That is a fact. In Lebanon, they don't live so well. Not in Egypt. In Jordan, people are extremely poor, and in Gaza, obviously, they're very, very hard there. So I would say that that's something to know. And just like I was mentioning to you, like who are the people of Israel? They're not necessarily the European Jews that we think of. In the unit like that I was in the border police, yeah, we had Christian Arabs that I served with, so many. Druze, Jews that were religious, like Orthodox, and we even had also Arab Muslim Israelis who served there. And one of the times where I was like closest to dying in one of the operations that I had was going to carry out a warrant to arrest a Palestinian man who had killed another Palestinian in somewhere near Jerusalem, which is part of where Israel has a responsibility security-wise. So I've risked my life for other Palestinians. I bet you a lot of people didn't even know that. They didn't think that was possible. I've told people, and they're like, "What? How? How is that possible?" I'm like, "Because things are not the way that you see them, like just black or white, right?" And I want also people to know that there's a lot of love, not just for America, also for Christians. I know that there's videos running around of, and a lot of people talk about it. It's like, oh, but I saw these Orthodox kids running around. They were spitting at Christians and something. I saw those videos too. I think it's rare. I don't understand who these people are. But 100% you have to be a little delusional to think that that's how Jews see Christians. As a matter of fact, like, I don't think we're closer to any other religion than we are to Christians, and the way that the values align and things align. So I'm grateful also for the Christian support of Israel. There's Christians in Israel who support all through my career, and we're always there to help. And I think people need to know that we're grateful for that. So I that's what I like to say to your audience predominantly.
I just this keeps bringing me back to a conversation I had with a detainee when I was working in the West Bank. I woke up one morning to take a piss, and I was taken by an officer. Said, "Hey, I need you to come over here." And basically, I had to stand guard over a prisoner. And this sounds a little naive and off of like protocol, but I had a conversation with this detainee in English, obviously, and we both came to the resolution that we didn't hate each other. And if we could have that conversation when I have somebody in my custody, how could it not be replicated? But there's some things in the way, right? Extremism on all sides has to go.
Yeah, for sure.
And if we can make that happen, then we do have a chance.
Also, he was in your custody, so that could be considered a forced confession.
Right.
You said a conversation, not a confession.
From the very beginning, I said it was a conversation.
Did you start with like, hey, I was in a crime scene in Los Angeles.
Let me tell you about OJ.
Yeah, right.
What are you guys doing on your day-to-day life now? What are you guys up to?
Well, I work in corporate America. I work in operations and business development.
Is that as miserable as that sounds?
It can be,
okay,
but it has some good perks.
Okay.
It does. So I do that. I work a lot with American nonprofits supporting American veteran community. Actually, my wife's a board member of a nonprofit called the Dauntless Veteran Foundation, where they actually help veterans get into agriculture. So you know in Gladiator, where he's dreaming about like his fields one day.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
They do that through grants, getting former soldiers into winemaking, goat farming, that sort of stuff. So,
You know they're making Gladiator 2?
I've heard,
Oh,
and I'm
nice.
stoked. The same
It's gonna
guy.
suck.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Balls.
waiting for Napoleon. So
Isn't that one already come out?
no, it hasn't.
super
I swear I've
excited
seen
for
it.
that.
Who's
preview.
going to play Napoleon?
That Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin
I
Phoenix, the
knew
guy
it.
who was in
I
Gladiator
knew it.
1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm
The
looking forward to
trailer's
that.
badass.
It is.
First off, I never met Napoleon, but I feel like he looks a lot like Napoleon.
I agree. So
I think so too. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I
He's
do.
got a crazy story, Napoleon, man.
Oh, fuck. Bernardo, what are you up to day to day?
Well, I work as an instructor of firearms, defensive tactics. At every level, really. I work for a company called Tactical Fitness in Austin. And I have a couple courses I brought to them, which is I have a curriculum. It's a family protector curriculum. And I merge sort of a concealed carry tactics with dignitary protection tactics into how you can protect your family
Yeah.
in a gas station, in an event, in the fair, in wherever you are. I also teach for Alert, which is an active shooter response organization out of Texas State University. And that's predominantly in Texas, but all over the country. It's got funding and budget from Department of Justice, and it's a very, very successful place. I work with Go Rock as well as a cadre, also firearms and stuff like that. Overall, that's what I do day to day. I travel for training. I'm most of the times in Texas. We have also a group with Tactical Fitness called the Combat Club, and that's a community of people who basically want to learn how to create the right environment to defend themselves against anything that can happen. And, today it's people are feeling it, right? Like, I get so many questions, can this happen in the U.S.? I mean, first of all, it's happened in the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a little wild
it's a
out
country
there.
where a lot of things have happened. But yeah, you want to be ready, right? And I think all of us are kind of in agreement with that. So it's a group that is by invitation. You have to do like certain training to be a part of it, and we train every week. We do things together as well. We're going to start volunteering soon or donating, and we might start with your organization. So that's what I do day to day. Yeah. Other than that, I like doing training, martial arts, and
What martial arts are you guys into?
I started with Thai boxing. Well, I was abused by Krav Maga in the military. I didn't like it. Yeah,
That's true.
I was abused. Then I go into Thai boxing. I like Thai boxing, Dutch kickboxing. I really like it. So I came from a striking background mostly. Then I started to do some MMA. I like that, and I do jiu-jitsu as well. Although I don't like jiu-jitsu, but I do it. Yeah. Because I just hate like sweaty men like rubbing on my head like all the time.
That's what Michael loves about
That's the
it.
best part.
That's what
likes to punch
he was
people.
talking to me. Is what is this jujitsu? And I said, it's 2 dudes. He's like, I'm in. That's all he knew about it.
And I get injured all the time, man. It's rough, man. But I see the value in it. Obviously, I'm not. I'm just a white belt, but I do jiu-jitsu, and even though it's challenging for me, it's very, very valuable. Yeah. So
Soon, though, you'll be the person sweating down upon somebody, and
Hopefully,
then
yeah.
you're gonna like it a lot more.
hopefully, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
And they always move people with the biggest people because I'm big, right? So
Yeah,
I'm
you're
always like,
you're not a tiny man.
I'm trying to grab this guy's leg, and it's like both hands on the leg. It's not happening, right? And then he falls on me. He's like, wow, it's like, I don't know, like a whale fell on me. It's fucking hard.
Yeah, that checks out. That sounds right. What advice would you guys have for people who are aware of what's going on in Israel? They want to do something to help in some way, shape, or form, and they have absolutely no idea what to do. What would you guys recommend?
I recommend helping the cities of the south that were affected by this, because those people, they're not going to get a lot from the government, and what they went through was literally hell. So I think that's where people need to look and help, and I think Richard has good ideas as to how to do that, right?
Yeah, definitely. The people of the South have been looked away for countless years in Israel. They've asked for more security. They've asked for support. They haven't got it. And I mean, we are talking about a community. When you hear red alert sirens, like they're used to it. It's not a big deal for them. The kids already know to go to the safe room. Imagine every single house has a structure that's meant for rocket attacks. It's usually the kid's house, the kid's room. So the parents just go to the room. It's not a big deal. They're used to that. They're not used to dealing with what they dealt with literally was seeing their entire families wiped out, entire circles of friends and families gone. A genocide happened last Saturday. There's a number of fundraisers out there that go directly to those kibbutzim, those agricultural communities. They're the ones that are going to need help, and give them time to grieve as well. When you make rash decisions that they were oppressors and colonizers, that's the same as to compare to America to some extent. That's the same as let's say there's people that were felled at the hands of police brutality, right? And they would always say their name, right? Pause. It doesn't matter what they did, whether criminal background or whatever it is, they were killed unjustly. You have children over there that were killed unjustly. Just give them that respect and that dignity, knowing that they were not an enemy of a people. They were not combatives. And just think about that. That's what I would start with. I think that's really where you have to unpack is I don't have a final answer for it besides supporting them financially. That's something you can do, but just give them that dignity as humans, as non-combatives. I
will let you guys close it out. Closing thoughts from each of you, one of you, however you guys would like to do it.
Well, I'll say first, thank you for having us, Andy.
Yeah, of course.
This is super short notice. I think we spoke on Friday. I was here on Saturday, so it was really short notice. And I want to say thank you to members of your community, everybody that's reached out to their Jewish friends or Palestinian friends and said, "Hey, are you okay?" Checking on them, because a lot of us are not okay. A lot of us have had one of the worst weeks of our lives. And just let's circle back to the conversations we had here, that it takes more than just a meme for us to make informed decisions on our geopolitical views. I would start there.
Yeah, well, I also want to start by saying thanks. And of course, thank you, Michael, Miguel, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you.
well, I mean, this platform is super important. That's why, you know, we came here, and you know, it's not because we're going to be celebrities or something like that. It's because this is a platform where we can do something outside of Israel, right? And what we want to do is just open up the fact that we're mostly like everybody else. A lot of people, like, not better than anybody, but certainly not worse than anybody else. And I want to open up minds for that, in terms of, like, just being aware that, hey, you're a human, I'm a human. Open up your mind. Not everything you see is what it is. And understand that there's also different opinions and things that happen over there, right? And if people want to help out, I will send you a link, but I'll have, like, in the company I work on, their website, tacticalfitnessaustin.com. We have a fundraiser there, and I'll add more stuff there as well.
I can put all that stuff in the show notes too, if you guys want to give me some suggestions on where to point people.
We have a GoFundMe set up.
Other than that, I just you know, wish that everybody here in America stays safe, and you know, make sure you're packing.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
That plays well in Montana. You actually get a ticket if you don't have a gun, if you get pulled over.
It's nice to be able to carry
the
in
treasure
Montana.
state.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.